Chapter 1187. The Marquis of Gaochong, Tian Shili, looked like a gentle middle-aged man. He was slightly skinny, and his clothes were very proper. There was nothing eye-catching about him. At this moment, he folded his hands in front of him and looked calmly at the young man on the square. Under the gazes of so many people, he could still hold his head high and remain calm. The confidence and calmness in his bones were admirable. The younger generation would surpass the older generation. Jiangwang's fief, Qingyang Town, was within Rizhao Prefecture, and Rizhao Prefecture Governor Tian Antai was Tian Shili's son. As long as he didn't cause any trouble, their relationship wouldn't be too bad. If one really wanted to talk about it, Tian Antai and Jiang Wang were fellow soldiers who had fought together on the battlefield of Qiyang. Jiang Wang even went to Seven Stars Valley to train. At that time, the Tian family also gave some preferential treatment, although at that time it was because of Zhong Xiansheng. However, it was also because of the Tian family. Hence, he was very calm. Speaking of which, in this battle of the Yellow River, 2 out of the 3 Tianjiao who fought for the country were related to the Zhongenjia. Jiang Wang and Cheng Gengsheng's relationship was well known. Yung Genzuan was also a direct descendant of the Chongxian family. These 2 Tianjiao were also in the limelight on the river viewing platform. The Chongxian family had become the most eye-catching family in Qi recently. The reason why Chongxian Yunbo didn't personally attend the ceremony was probably because he wanted to keep a low profile. In recent years, Chongxian Yunbo had been attending fewer and fewer important events, which in itself was a message. The old marquis had injured his foundation on the battlefield in his early years, and he had no hope of ascending. Now that he was over 100 years old, his blood and qi were both weak. The identity of the Zhongenjia heir should be decided. Currently, his influence was slowly fading. However, it seemed like he hadn't decided who would replace him. One Yung Genzuan, one Cheng Gengsheng. If it was him, Tian Shili, he would also find it hard to make a choice. What a blissful headache. In the Chongxian clan, which was full of heroes, Chongxian Mingguang, that idiot, really had a unique style. Today, he still came here ostentatiously. Whenever he met someone, he would say that if his Zuner had not just entered the outer sect, Do Zhao would certainly not be his match. If he had been given 2 more months, he would have been able to teach Do Zhao well. Taking the first prize would be as easy as taking something out of his pocket. Even though his Zun was tied for second place, he was actually considered first place and should be considered to have won first place. She repeated these words over and over again and even muttered them in front of him. He seemed to think that he could fight for something for his son by doing this, but he didn't know that it would only make people laugh. Tian Shili replied with a few perfunctory words, but in his heart, he was really annoyed. His gaze shifted slightly. Inadvertently, he met a pair of cold eyes. The owner of this pair of eyes had an extraordinary appearance. He was dressed appropriately and had a proper posture. Although his expression was calm, the hatred in his eyes could not be hidden. It was Xian Huaibua and Yu Yangqi. Tian Shili smiled warmly. The hatred of a defeated dog was not worth mentioning. The Ryu family did not live up to expectations and could not be helped up. In the end, the Yin family broke off the engagement. It was originally a matter of meeting and parting amicably. If they left some incense, the Yin family might extend a helping hand in the future. However, Yu Yangqi pestered Yin Fu, a junior, and acted shamelessly, causing everyone to be embarrassed. This matter had long become a laughingstock in Qi's aristocratic circle. His daughter would not be able to marry into a lesser aristocratic family, let alone Yin Fu. If it was a talented girl like Qi Xiao, she would not need to be bound by an engagement or rely on anyone's family. Furthermore, it was not impossible for her to support her family. However, that person called Yu Huchong did not show any talent. At best, he was better than that trash Lu Xuanhu. Therefore, Tian Shili smiled even more sincerely. This kind of smile was undoubtedly very dazzling to Yu Yangqi, so he coldly looked away. Clang, clang, clang. I hope he can continue to smile like this. He thought so as the chimes played. At this moment, the ceremony had evolved to the climax. Yung Genzuan, who had already received his reward, and the leader, Chao Jie, had already retreated to the side. They did not compete with today's main character. Only Jiang Wang, who won the Riverview platform this time, stood silently in the center of the square. Behind him was the solemn imperial ancestral temple, and in front of him was the emperor of Deqi. Deqi's officials, nobles, and common people, old and young, were on his left and right, watching him. The bronze chimes played grand music under the court musicians' chimes. Hearing the sound, there was a divine light in front of their eyes. Hearing the sound, one's ears were like the sound of tide. It was as if rain was falling in an empty valley. It was as if wind was passing by, passing through thousands of ravines. The vastness and grandeur of the world were gradually approaching in the sound. Every syllable was at the most solemn point. Every part of his voice was majestic and dignified, without a single flaw. This song was called Worship of the Origin. It was one of the most solemn, sacrificial music in Deqi's court. Those who worship the Origin respect the heavenly Tao. Today's memorial is also a way to pay tribute to the ancestors. It was to praise the ancestral temples of Deqi. In this solemn, sacrificial music, the chief ceremonial officer held the imperial edict and walked to Emperor Dan. The person who first announced the imperial edict for Yungunzuan was the deputy ceremonial officer of this ceremony. He was wearing a solemn and complicated ceremonial robe. Every step he took was impeccable. He faced Jiang Wang and also the imperial ancestral temple behind Jiang Wang. He opened the imperial edict with a solemn and reverent expression. Every word in his voice was mellow and full. It was just right. I heard that since ancient times, talents need to be irrigated by wind and rain. Pillars of rivers and mountains for thousands of miles should be chiseled by the sun and moon. Thus, he walked the river of stars, bathed in the light, and walked above the 9 heavens. Qi's famous Jiang Wang was the most beautiful jade in the world. He was 19 years old and had not experienced many years. However, in the country war, he killed generals and seized flags. He bravely saved the emperor before the emperor. He governed the land and kept the people safe. He was awarded a blue medal and solved many important cases. He was first in the Imperial Martial Arts exhibition. He competed in Tianjiao and won first place. How strong! He raised Qi's majestic aura and stepped down from the heavens. A sword across the sky has become a name in the world. Ascending to the heavens and spreading the flag has become known throughout the world. He did not need wind and rain to support the heavens. He was a peerless talent. He did not need to carve to become a weapon. Wasn't that the work of the heavens? He accumulated merits and became a green sheep. He was bestowed the title of a grade 3 golden melon warrior. He was allowed to bring his sword to court. The sun and moon were already bright, shining the light of treasures. He was bestowed with the Rui celestial robe to drape over his body. He was free to choose any yellow gray Dao technique for the palace treasury. He had 1,000 essence stones and didn't have to worry about grain. He had a mansion and didn't have to worry about worldly matters. You should always encourage him, and I will always praise him. The music of the offering of the primordial spirit had slowly faded away. Everyone in the square looked at Jiang Wang with fervent gazes. The rewards this time were too generous. It was natural for him to be promoted by 1 rank. There was nothing much to say. The Dao Technique essence stones were also normal. A mansion in Linzi City could already be considered a luxurious one. Only the grade 3 Golden Melon Warrior was a title that made people envious. The Golden Melon Warrior was just an empty title. Of course, it was nominally the responsibility of being a guard in front of the palace. However, not everyone could be on duty in front of the emperor. For example, Donghua scholar Li Zhengshu had an extraordinary status in the Qi court just because he often entered the Donghua pavilion. Many people couldn't compete for it, even if they racked their brains, so this point could be omitted. But Grade 3, the Grade 3 official's cultivation base, was at the Shunlin realm. Jiang Wang was only at the Intermansion realm. In theory, he could only be a Grade 5 official. His Grade 4 blue medal was already obtained by skipping levels. The gap between Grade 4 and Grade 3 was like a moat. This was practically reaching the heavens in one step. Although the Golden Melon Warrior was an empty title, this rank meant that he could be on equal footing with other Grade 3 officials. More importantly, once his cultivation base increased in the future, there would be no obstacles in obtaining official titles that matched his rank. The Grade 3 Golden Melon Warrior already made people envious, but there were so many officials and nobles present that it wasn't too shocking. However, there was an additional sentence at the end of the imperial edict. You are allowed to bring a sword to court. This wasn't a title or a salary, but it represented Emperor Qi's extreme favor. After all, Jiang Wang's cultivation base and age were already too young to be promoted. In order to show his favor, Emperor Qi could only express his favor in other ways. How many people were still in court today who were allowed to bring a sword to court? There were no more than 30 people in total. Except for the officials in the Political Affairs Hall, the commanders of the 9 soldiers in the Military Affairs Hall, and the nobles and world-suppressing experts. Jiang Wang, who was only 19 years old, was already among them. This was also a kind of hope. Into Qi's Political Affairs Hall, or Military Affairs Hall, the emperor intended to leave a position for Jiang Wang. What an extreme favor. Chapter 1188. Jiang Wang could feel the weight of their gazes. He could also feel the emotions in their gazes. Amidst the heated, envious, and suspicious gazes of the crowd, Jiang Wang thought of the widely circulated words that were used to evaluate the current emperor. The current emperor is a mighty ruler. No matter if it's kindness or punishment, there's no difference. There was no reward, no punishment. Today, because he helped Qi take first place at the river viewing platform and spread his name across the world, Emperor Qi was extremely honored. If he made a mistake in the future, what would happen when the emperor got angry? It wasn't that today's son of heaven Qi was so fake. In fact, Emperor Qi's reward this time was already very exceptional. Everyone could feel how important Emperor Qi was to him. His performance at the master ceremony had already received the emperor's praise. This time, his performance at the river viewing platform was undeniable. There was nothing to nitpick about, and he had made Qi proud. Although the reward was heavy, he could accept it. Jiang Wang just reminded himself that he still had a long way to go, and he needed to be careful. Today was his most glorious moment in Qi. With the title of Yellow River Champion and the #1 inner house in the world, he was rewarded by Emperor Qi in front of the Qi's imperial ancestral temple. He was already Grade 3 and had a sword with him. Although he didn't have any real power, at least in name, he had already jumped into the upper echelons of Qi. His future was also filled with expectations. However, the emperor's kindness and punishment were all up to the emperor. He should know what was the true foundation of a person's life. The glory in front of him stopped in front of him. As for the future, it would depend on how he walked. Jiang Wang took 3 steps forward. Every step was firm and steady. He didn't show any arrogance or fear. He just cupped his hands in front of him and bowed deeply. I'm deeply grateful and thank the emperor for his kindness. I will work hard and don't dare to slack off. On the viewing platform, the current Marquis of City, destroying Li Jinyan, looked at the youth in the center of the square and was amazed. At such a young age, he had achieved so much and enjoyed so much glory, but his eyes were still so clear. People like him knew the importance of being clear-headed. Those who weren't clear-headed enough might be able to make a name for themselves for a while, but they couldn't make a name for themselves forever. It was even more commendable that a 19-year-old Tianjiao was able to remain clear-headed in the face of unprecedented glory. It was no wonder that someone like his brother would praise this young man so much. Back then, Li Longchuan was on good terms with Cheng Gengsheng and Jiang Wang. Naturally, he stood against Yun Gunzuan and Wang Yiwu. He was still somewhat dissatisfied. It was only because he trusted Li Longchuan and knew that his son always had a sense of propriety that he didn't say anything. Now it seemed that among all the sons and daughters of noble officials, there really weren't many who could compare with Jiang Wang. From a utilitarian point of view, Li Longchuan's friendship was worth it. Thinking of this, Li Zhengyan suddenly laughed. If his elder brother were to hear his thoughts, He would reprimand him for thinking too much about mundane matters and being tainted with vulgarity. However, how many of the court officials and nobles in the world could be exempt from this vulgarity? He thought to himself, who knew how long the clarity in this young man's eyes would last. After the ceremonial official finished announcing the decree, a group of eunuchs walked out in a line, carrying the rewards on jade trays. On the first jade tray, there was an exquisitely made storage box, and 1,000 primeval stones were stored inside. On the second jade tray were land deeds and house deeds. They were held down by a key, representing a mansion in Lindsay City. She had dominated the East region for decades. The mansions in Lindsay City were different from other places, and it was difficult to buy one even if one had money. If one didn't have the corresponding power and status, one wouldn't be able to stay for long even if one bought one. On the third tray was a jade token. It was the proof to go to the emperor's treasury to choose a supreme Tao technique. On the fourth jade tray, there was a neatly folded outer garment. It looked really bright, but he didn't know what was so special about it. It was only now that Jiang Wang realized that the Rui celestial robe was probably the most valuable one among all the rewards. It wasn't that he had a discerning eye and was able to tell the difference in one look. It was that among the 4 eunuchs who brought out the trays, the first 3 were ordinary eunuchs. Only the last one was the eunuch of the ceremony directorate, and it was Qiu, whom he was familiar with. The statuses of the recipients were so different, so the gifts were naturally divided into noble and lowly. In particular, Qiu's eyes were smiling. It was obvious that he approved of this gift. This was a silent hint. Speaking of which, the emperor really put in a lot of effort into the rewards this time. Even the last reward was given by Qiu, who had already met him once, to deliver it. The eunuchs holding the jade trays walked forward one by one and presented the rewards. Jiang Wang didn't hesitate and accepted them one by one in the square in front of everyone. Strictly speaking, it was slightly rude here. Under normal circumstances, such rewards would be sent to the residents after the event. However, everyone knew that before receiving the deed for the house and land, Jiang Wang didn't have his own residence in Lindsay. He had always been living in Cheng Gengsheng's residence and didn't have a housekeeper or the like to receive it on his behalf before a wild grass could become a dragon. It would take some time to make up for it. It was worth mentioning that when Jiang Wang received the storage box, he deftly moved all the primeval stones in the box back into his own storage box. Then, he planned to return the empty storage box to the jade tray. However, the eunuch took a step back and avoided it. Jiang Wang was stunned for a moment before he understood. His liver was burning with anger. That despicable Chongxian fatty. Why would he be so calculative about the rewards given by Qi Ting and insist on taking back a storage box? When he received the title of Qingyang Man, he was clearly tricked by that fatty. On both sides of the high platform, many people laughed softly. Obviously, they didn't expect that the hero of the Qi, Tianjiao, would be so honest and simple. When he heard that it was 1,000 primeval stones, he really thought that it was only primeval stones and even wanted to return the storage box. At first, some people frowned and thought that he was so stingy that he even wanted to check it in front of the emperor. Jiang Wang forced himself to calm down and not let his embarrassment be too obvious. He put away the storage box made by Qi Ting as if nothing had happened and looked at Qiu as if nothing had happened. Qiu was still smiling gently and didn't have any intention of mocking him. The last person held the jade tray and moved his feet. Suddenly, Jiang Wuyo's voice came from the pill emperor's seat. The Tianjiao of the countries will compete, and the winner will be the good man of the Qi. She stood up from the table and revealed a heroic smile. I will personally wear this robe for Jiang Wang. On the phoenix chair, the empress turned her head to look at the emperor. She still couldn't see his expression. She also didn't say anything. Crown Prince Jiang Wuhua's expression was calm, as if he didn't hear anything. Jiang Wuxia put a red fruit that was already in her mouth back on the tray. It was worth mentioning that compared to the master's ceremony last time, Jiang Wuqi's seating position didn't change. He was still next to his brothers and sisters, and it seemed that he was still one of the 4 palace lords with the highest chance of competing for the throne. However, he could no longer sit in front of Son of Heaven Chi like last time. At this moment, he was sitting with a fox fur coat draped over his shoulders, and his face looked paler than usual. Although he was smiling, he felt that it was very difficult. Jiang Wuyo's strong and long legs seemed to be stepping on many people's hearts. She walked down the Pill Emperor's seat step by step and walked to Qiuji's side. She picked up the immortal robe and held it in her left hand. Then, she walked past without looking back. From the beginning to the end, Qiuji lowered his head slightly and was very respectful. Jiang Wuyo held the Rui immortal robe with one hand and walked in front of Jiang Wang. Jiang Wang looked in her eyes and felt that she was hinting at something. However, Jiang Wuyo didn't make any small talk. She just smiled at him and said, "In the ancient times, the 9 great immortal palaces dominated the world. This Rui immortal robe came from one of them." Jiang Wang's heart skipped a beat. Another thing related to the 9 great immortal palaces. If one were to say that Tian Jiaoqi had put in a lot of effort in rewarding him, then this reward was the one that showed his effort. His instant meteoric success technique had been seen by the world at the Riverview platform. There were so many powerful cultivators in the various countries, and there were definitely many that recognized the immortal palaces. To Qi Ting, it was no secret that Jiang Wang had part of the immortal palace's inheritance. That was why he had this Rui immortal robe. It wasn't just a formal reward, but also a reward that was just right and useful. It was found in Qi's treasury and specially given to Jiang Wang. Emperor Qi either didn't reward him, or he would make people die for him. Jiang Wang didn't show any emotion on his face. However, Jiang Wuyo only shook the Rui immortal robe open, and the light flowed in the air until she took a few steps forward. It seemed that there were still remnants of the light, which was dazzling. Jiang Wuyo walked behind Jiang Wang. At this distance, she could feel Jiang Wang's unique temperament. She seemed to be able to hear his heartbeat. It was so calm and steady like a song, singing the story of this young man's journey. With her status as the Empress, she had undoubtedly made a very successful investment. As for how successful it was, she could tell from how unwilling her 9th brother was. As the Empress, vision was also a very important talent, which could add a lot of color to her. Putting aside her status as the Empress, she did see a special characteristic in Jiang Wang that was different from others. Obviously, he was still very young, and his strength was far from those true powerhouses, but he gave off a very reliable feeling. It seemed that there was nothing this person couldn't do. If there was a day when they could get along purely as friends, it would be a different feeling. After hearing that Jiang Wang had won first place, Cheng Gongsheng was so excited at the Riverview platform that he was about to go crazy. With her understanding of that fatty, she only felt that it was very rare. Although Cheng Gongsheng was always smiling and cheeky and shameless, there were really too few moments when he truly let go. From this angle, Jiang Wang's long black hair quietly hung down, simply tied up with a hairband. Of course, she could also feel that there was a mysterious pattern on his back, where his spine and cervical vertebrae intersected. In it, the will of God had been obliterated and only some kind of original aura remained. It was said that when he was at the Riverview platform, it guided the starlight, causing the stars to suddenly appear and the sky to fall into night, helping him to nail down Qin Zhizhen's magical iron wall. She suddenly wanted to see what kind of magnificent scene that was. Of course, there was a matter at this moment. She unfolded the Rui immortal robe and personally put it on Jiang Wang's body. The colorful immortal robe silently hid its brilliance and turned into an ordinary green robe, covering Jiang Wang's original clothes. On the high platform, Chongshuan's Mingguang was so envious that his teeth ached. The Son of Heaven bestowed a gift. The Empress put on a robe. What kind of glory was this? He looked at his Tianjiao son, who was peerless and peerless, but was casually sent away. He couldn't help but curl his lips. A mere guest. When Jiang Wang put on the Rui immortal robe, he already understood the ability of this immortal robe. The size of this robe could change at will. Needless to say, it was comfortable to wear, and almost all treasured robes had the effect of avoiding dust. From the moment it was put on, It was absorbing his power in a way that he still couldn't fully understand. Tao essence, blood chi. It seemed that any kind of power could be used. It was not picky and would stop when it reached its saturation level. At first glance, it felt very strange. But this kind of absorption was very subtle and gentle and would not cause harm to the host. The speed of absorbing Tao essence was far slower than the speed of automatically producing Tao essence in the heavenly palace. The speed of absorbing blood chi was not as fast as the speed of a human body automatically recovering blood chi. This method of absorption gave him the feeling that it was very similar to the feeling of the ethereal palace absorbing vitality in the void. It might be some kind of method that was common in the Immortal Palace era. At the same time, he could also take the initiative to pour power into it to speed up its absorption. And the power absorbed by the Rui Immortal Robe formed a hidden array pattern. This array pattern had two effects. One was to preserve power and return it to the host at any time. The second was to resist different degrees of damage according to the consumption of power. At present, the limit of its defense was unknown. Compared to its defense, Jiang Wang was more concerned about the former. In a sense, this immortal robe could be equivalent to twice the amount of Tao essence or blood chi reserves. The so-called immortal robe seemed to not only be able to change size at will, but also here. It was a pity that it could not absorb the light of the divine ability. Jiang Wang secretly tried it, but there was no reaction. In the end, it could not be compared to Qin Zhizhen's myriad transformations. As for the information of the immortal palace that this immortal robe represented, he did not obtain any. These feelings only turned in his heart, and Jiang Wang bowed softly. "Thank you for your trouble, Palace Master Huaying. From I, the Qi warrior, I also feel honored. What trouble is there?" Jiang Wuyo pulled away, looked at him from afar, and nodded in satisfaction. Only then did he walk back to the high platform openly and without any hesitation. Truly valiant and formidable. Civil and military officials, nobles, and the common people were all watching. She walked between Jiang Wang and Son of Heaven Qi, wearing a gorgeous palace robe, like a dragon walking. At the end of the path of the dragon walking, Son of Heaven Qi sat alone on the dragon throne, silent and imposing. And at the starting point of the dragon walking, Jiang Wang, wearing the Rui immortal robe, stood calmly in the huge square in front of the imperial ancestral temple. He was 19 years old, and his words and smile were all focused on. The corners of his eyebrows and the tips of his hair were full of spirit. At the same time, the officials were illustrious, full of clothes. He was in the center. It was the day, the 55th year of the Yuan Feng de Qi, the 21st of July. It was already the end of summer, and autumn was still far away. There was no need for spring breeze, so naturally he was proud. Chapter 1189. The sun that shone down on Linzi City also shone down on Days County. However, some people felt warmth and glory, while some people felt pain and suffering. Lu Xiao was not of the main bloodline. His surname was not Lu, and he did not know what his surname was. He was an abandoned baby that old Master Lu had picked up by the side of the road in his early years. Originally, he had done a moment of kindness and had casually raised him in the clan, treating it as having another child. However, when he was young, he showed great talent in martial arts. The precious meridian opening pill could not be wasted on a child. It was also old Master Lu who stood his ground and gave him one. Lu Xiao did not disappoint him. Whether it was his mastery of secret techniques or his progress in cultivation, he was much better than others. Old Master Lu placed more importance on him and provided him with resources. Lu Xiao did not disappoint. Every bit of resources was returned to him, and he grew to become a god-descending realm expert. When old Master Lu was still alive, he was loyal to the Lu family and had made great contributions to the family. After old Master Lu died, he supported the new Xian Huaibua and Yu Yongqi without holding back. When Lu Shentong died, he was the first to rush to Changming County. He swore to kill Tian Onping on his way back. Unfortunately, he did not succeed. After that battle, the Ryu family fell. There was no second Lu Shintong. Lu Xuanhu was completely different from his dazzling elder brother. He was dull, and his talent was limited. He was truly not enlightened. He was trapped in front of the gate of heaven and earth, and no one could help him. Yu Huchang was a hard-working child. However, compared to Lu Shantong, he was far from being able to support the family. Only the marriage agreement with the Yin clan that he made when he was young could be considered as a guarantee. As for Yu Yongqi, Xian Huaibu's spirit seemed to have completely collapsed after Lu Shintong's death. She was trying her best to perform on the stage of a top aristocratic family. She looked smooth and slick, but it seemed like everything she did was wrong. Since Lu Shintong's death, everything he did not achieve the desired effect. The Ryu clan was on the decline. The result of the battle in Chongming Prefecture was that Tian Anping was punished, and the Tian family had to bear the pain of cutting off their own flesh. The Ryu clan received a large amount of resources as compensation. However, the Fufeng Ryu clan did not lack resources. What they lacked was Tianjiao. Lu Xiao watched helplessly as Madame Lu fell step by step into the abyss. But there was nothing he could do. He only knew how to cultivate and fight. After all, old Master Lu had never taught him how to revitalize a family. In a great empire like the Qi, he was treading on thin ice, even though he was a divine descent cultivator. There were many things that he didn't dare to touch, and there were many things that he didn't know if he could touch. He was tired of watching the infighting and scheming within the top-notch families. He could only watch. I'm like a god. Even a god is incompetent. Now that Yu Huchang's engagement had been annulled, Yu Yongqi's branch would be transferred to the main wife, and the Fufeng Ryu clan would become the laughingstock of the world. Tian Anping, who had caused all of this, was about to reach the end of his 10 years. The battle in Chongming Prefecture had left a deep impression on Lu Xiao. Once Tian Anping broke free, the Fufeng Ryu clan would never be able to rise again. Lu Xiao had already made up his mind. He swore to kill Tian Anping. It couldn't be too early. When Tian Anping was first imprisoned, the Tian family would definitely be on guard to prevent the Ryu clan from taking the risk. If he acted then, there was no chance of success. That was why the Fufeng Ryu clan had been keeping a low profile and trying to lessen the humiliation. However, it couldn't be too late. By the end of the year or the beginning of next year, the Tian family would be on guard again. The 4th of March next year would be the anniversary of Lu Shintong's death and the day that Tian Anping broke free. He had been suppressed for 10 years after breaking the golden body jade marrow, destroying the 4 saint pavilions, and being suppressed to the inner palace realm. If it was anyone else, it would be hard to see the possibility of a comeback. However, this person was Tian Anping. She was an existence whose name was taboo. Her name was taboo. Even if people hated him or feared him, they would only guess how long it would take for him to return to the ascension stage. Lu Xiao, who had personally fought with Tian Anping, witnessed Tian Anping's ascension to the divine ascension stage, and witnessed Tian Anping's fall from the inner mansion realm, would never doubt Tian Anping's terrifying strength. He had only done one thing all these years, which was to observe the Tian family. He hid under the pretext of going into seclusion and didn't ask for help. On the 21st of the 7th month in the 55th year of the Yuan Feng dynasty, it was an extremely good day. It might also be the best day ever. Linzi City was holding a celebratory ceremony. After Qi became the leader of the Yellow River, he was already in front of the Imperial Ancestral Temple. Yu Yongqi had gone to Linzi to observe the ceremony, and so did Marquis Gaochang Tian Shili. However, Tian Huanwen was still overseas. There were no ascension gods in the entire city. He wanted to kill Tian Anping, even if Qi Ting wanted to take responsibility for it. He wanted to let the world know that the revenge of the Ryu clan could be avenged in 10 years, but he wouldn't forget it even in 100 years. If Tian Anping didn't break through, he would die when facing Ascension God. If Tian Anping broke through, he would break the contract and die. Lu Xiao slapped the city gate guard to death, and the other guards sounded the alarm drum. Cultivators could be seen everywhere in the city. Even Tian Huanwen's cousin, the old man named Tian Huanzhong, had already flown to the end of the long street. However, when Lu Xiao announced his name and rose from the ground on the long street, most of the cultivators stopped moving. Tian Huanzhong directly shrank back. Who could stop a sentient god? He had seen Tian Huanzhong in Chaming County. At that time, the old man was arrogant and called him Raw Lu. Today, he shrank back quickly. Flying under the rising sun, Lu Xiao could see the center of the city in a single glance. He saw the two-story building with a strange appearance. It was a two-story building in the center of this damnable square city. It was like a shaft high above the ground, and the walls of the well were filled with ugly and strange burrows. Only a single skylight was open. Of the 4 doors, 3 were locked with black chains. Only the door in the north was bare. Tian Anping. Lu Xiao silently repeated this name in his heart. Suddenly, over 10 figures flew up in front of him. There were soaring dragons, inner palaces and outer palaces. Their cultivations varied, and they formed a great formation. The leader grasped the formation diagram and said loudly, "Lu Xiao, what happened in the past is over. Do you know what crime you committed today?" Lu Xiao cracked a smile. This was more like it. After all, this was an opponent he had faced alone for so long. Today, he was going to go on a killing spree. If the road ahead was unobstructed, the Tian clan's Tian Huanzhong's generation would be too disappointing. How could they be worth his resolution? His spiritual sense swept out. Without a second word, Lu Xiao pressed down with his palm. One palm was 6 palms. Up and down, left and right, front and back, huge palms condensed out of thin air. Like 6 high walls, they firmly surrounded the 10-plus cultivators and pushed at the same time. This was the 6 directions collapse. Bang! The 10-plus figures were swept away, leaving only a broken formation diagram in the bloody mist that filled the sky, swaying as it fell. This was Lu Xiao going all out. The inner palaces and outer palaces were at divine descent. How could a formation diagram surpass them? Lu Xiao's figure swept through the bloody mist that filled the sky. Suddenly, he arrived above the auxiliary guard building and jumped in through the well. Then he saw a barefoot man sitting cross-legged on the floor of the building, only wearing a thin garment. The man was looking up at him, sitting in the well to observe him. There was a trace of bewilderment in the man's eyes. At this time, Lu Xiao flew upside down and pressed a palm in front of him. The power of a divine descent cultivator instantly covered the small 2-story building. Tian Anping, you deserve to die. He almost didn't feel any resistance. The power of the inner palaces shouldn't be the resistance of a divine descent cultivator. Some of the methods in the auxiliary guard building were all broken through like rotten wood. His palm pressed on Tian Anping's face as expected. Roaring Tao essence madly poured into the man's body. He wanted to destroy Tian Anping's 5 palaces seas, destroy Tian Anping's 5 inner palaces, and destroy Tian Anping's heaven-span palace. He wanted to sever Tian Anping's life path and make it impossible for Tian Anping to revive. But the place where the Tao essence roared was actually empty. With the strength of his spiritual sense, he actually couldn't find Tian Anping's inner palaces. What was going on? Lu Xiao said in bewilderment. Where is your inner palaces? At this moment, his palm was still pressed tightly on Tian Anping's face. Tian Anping's voice slowly seeped out from between his fingers. You're in my residence, yet you ask where my inner palaces are. Chapter 1190. When Lu Xiao's palm pressed down, he simultaneously destroyed Tian Anping's body and the 4 seas. His lifespan was cut off, and so was his cultivation path. However, the vanishing inner palace was so frightening that he almost overlooked the fact that Tian Anping's head still existed after his palm pressed down. That was until Tian Anping's voice leaked out from between his fingers. He could even feel Tian Anping's ice-cold breath as he spoke, brushing past his fingertips. He suddenly realized that the person in front of him wasn't Tian Anping. This was an ice-cold body, not Tian Anping himself. Or rather, he doubted whether or not this was a body. Within the range of his spiritual sense, a god advent powerhouse, was like a god descending upon the world. But today, he actually had doubts about his own spiritual sense power. Can I really control this place? Is what I sense real or fake? Then where is the real Tian Anping? And what did he's in my residence mean? In the twinkling of an eye, 1,000 thoughts raced. Suddenly, a hand reached out and grabbed his wrist. Regardless of whether or not this body was the real Tian Anping, this body had now reached out and grabbed his wrist. It was like an iron hoop. It described an ice-cold and unyielding feeling. A powerful force surged and pulled his hand down, all the way until it was away from his face. Lu Xiao could sense that this was pure and terrifying physical strength. Thus, he met Tian Anping's eyes. It was a pair of somewhat perplexed eyes. It seemed that there was a great deal of confusion regarding this world and everything in front of him. Tian Anping's voice said, "Did you come here today to protect the Ryu clan or to eliminate the fear in your heart?" He looked at Lu Xiao. His voice wasn't loud, but each word seemed to announce the truth of this world. It was an extremely cold, extremely cruel truth. So many years have passed, but you haven't made any progress. Tian Anping said thus. Lu Xiao, you tore up the old agreement and trespassed into my residence. His long hair suddenly fluttered, and after the perplexity in his eyes was brushed away, there was an intertwined indifference and madness. I'll kill you. What a joke. Die for me. Lu Xiao was furious. Transcendent palace, inner mansion, outer tower, and hidden star sea's temple of accumulation. All of them exploded. Primordial Tao, divine ability light, astral force, Tao path force, divine soul force, the great strength of a divinity descent cultivator erupted without reservation. He easily retracted his hand that was pulled away and pressed it on the face again. Then, a terrifying power exploded. Boom! There was a terrifying explosion in the air. Tian Anping's body, which he had been holding down, disappeared. It had disappeared completely, leaving nothing behind. Lu Xiao knew that he had not killed anything. He looked around and found that the strange two-story building was empty. It was a monotonous, unadorned room, devoid of any other color, no other decoration, nothing but the walls so monotonous and dull that it was maddening. Ordinary people wouldn't even be able to stay there for a day. What kind of crazy person would be able to sit in such a place for nearly 10 years? There was only one thought in Lu Xiao's mind. He couldn't let Tian Anping escape. He was willing to risk universal condemnation, tearing up the original decision made in Chongming County, brazenly coming to the city to kill Tian Anping. It would be fine if he succeeded, but if he failed, he couldn't imagine how Tian Anping would treat the Fufeng Ryu clan in the future. No matter how the Tian family retaliated, it was still within the rules of the aristocratic family's game. Tian Anping, on the other hand, would not be limited by the rules. Even if he died, he wouldn't have the face to see the man who picked him up from the roadside, the man who treated him like a teacher and a father. Lu Xiao jumped out of the well. What he saw, it was a monotonous and dull scene. The four walls were empty, and there was a skylight that could be seen clearly. There were no other colors, no decorations, no other decorations. It was still a Fubai building. What was going on? Lu Xiao had a huge sense of panic. He was not willing to admit that Tian Anping had guessed what was on his mind. When Tian Anping was still in the divinity descent realm, he was stronger than Tian Anping. After Tian Anping's golden body jade marrow was broken and the four great sacred buildings were destroyed, he was much stronger than Tian Anping. However, in his heart, he had been afraid of this person for so many years. The most talented person he had seen in his life was Lu Shintong. He knew that if they were both in the outer building realm, he wouldn't be Lu Shintong's match. However, Lu Shintong was killed by Tian Anping at the same realm. He wanted to kill Tian Anping with his divinity descent realm strength. But Tian Anping had reached the divinity descent realm right in front of him. That feeling, it was like stepping on an ant. It should have been settled with one stomp. However, no matter how much you stepped on it, it wouldn't die. Moreover, the ant suddenly grew as tall as you. It was an indescribable feeling of despair. The difference in talent between people was even greater than the difference between an ant and a human. Unfortunately, in terms of talent, he was the ant that had to look up to humans. He was indeed afraid. Not being able to kill Tian Anping with his own hands in Changming County had become a nightmare in his heart. Every day, every night, every moment, he thought about killing Tian Anping. Therefore, Tian Anping was right. He came to Changming County for the Ryu family, and for himself. He came to repay the kindness of the Ryu family, and to get rid of the fear in his heart. If he couldn't get rid of this nightmare in his heart, he, Lu Xiao, would also be a cripple. In the past 10 years, his cultivation hadn't advanced an inch. He used his pride as a divinity descent cultivator to maintain his strength in front of Tian Anping. Even though Su Yangyi's probing and perplexed eyes seemed to see through his heart. But outside the auxiliary building, why was it still the auxiliary building? His spiritual sense enveloped the area, but he actually couldn't sense anything strange. Where in the world was this place? Lu Xiao waved his hand, fusing Tao essence, star force, and the strength of his soul to form a curved, treasured saber. He slashed with the back of his hand, cleaving through the void between reality and illusion. The wall of the building was cut open, and he leapt out. His gaze swept around. All he saw were 4 walls and a single skylight. It was still the auxiliary building, the eternally monotonous, eternally dry, eternally unchanged auxiliary building. Linzi City. The grand ceremony finally came to an end. Jiang Wang took first place and announced it to the Imperial Ancestral Temple. In a certain sense, this grand ceremony was Son of Heaven Qi praising his ancestors. Of course, it was solemn and solemn. The edict had been announced, the rewards had been received, and the sacrificial text had been burned. Just as the ceremonial officer was about to announce the end of the ceremony, a commotion suddenly broke out on the high platform where the hundreds of officials stood. Marquis Gaochong, Tian Shili, was like a mad lion, roaring angrily. "You young Qi, do you want to be killed?" He directly pushed aside the officials next to him and aggressively pressed toward Xian Huaibua and Yu Young Qi. "Marquis Gaochong, you can't. If you have something to say, say it later." The officials next to him all tried to persuade him, but Tian Shili ignored them all. "Don't stop him." Yu Young Qi directly spread out his hands, pushing them to the sides, and moved forward. "Let's see how he'll kill my Lu family." A hereditary marquis and a hereditary count were about to fight in this grand ceremony. Chapter 1191. An empty space was opened up on the grand and noble platform. Not many people were willing to get into trouble like this. "How dare you?" Jiang Romo took a step forward and stood between Tian Shili and Yu Young Qi. Even though this minister of state was known for his gentleness and rarely got angry, and was even called the Minister of State Do by some people, at this moment, he couldn't help but fly into a rage. His mother-in-law's face was red with anger. "What are you two trying to do in front of the Imperial Ancestral Temple? Isn't it enough to make a fool of yourself? Do you still want to embarrass yourself in front of the previous emperor?" Chao Jie took a step forward and placed his hand on his sword. It was as if the emperor was going to kill the 2 nobles with his sword if he gave the order. "Lord State Minister." Tian Shili was stunned for a moment before he reacted. He turned to the high platform and bowed deeply. "Your Majesty, do you remember the old agreement in Changming County?" The Pill Emperor was silent. Tian Shili maintained his bowing posture and didn't move. Even with his godly descent cultivation, cold sweat actually appeared on his forehead. Plop! At this moment, Yu Young Qi knelt on the ground. We shouted at the Imperial Ancestral Temple. "We deserve death." Tian Shili's body became heavier, but he didn't dare to move. He wanted to jump up and kill Yu Young Qi on the spot, but he could only roar in his heart. With every breath that the Emperor of Great Qi remained silent, the weight on his back grew heavier. The heavenly might was like a prison, suppressing him to the point that he couldn't breathe. After an unknown period of time, Tian Shili seemed to have endured an entire lifetime in the battle with fear. The Emperor on the dragon throne slowly said, What does Marquis Gaochong want to teach me? Plop. I'm afraid. Tian Shili also knelt down and kowtowed. His hands stretched over his head and pressed against the ground. He was filled with fear and trepidation. I don't have the ability to teach you, Your Majesty. Jiang Wang watched this scene from the side and felt the majesty of the current Emperor Deqi's methods more and more. With just a moment of silence and a question, Marquis Gaochong's spine was crushed. His sharp spirit of denouncing a punitive expedition was crushed into powder. The Emperor of Deqi said slowly, I would like to know why Marquis Gaochong is so angry today. Your Majesty Fu Qi is wise. Tian Shili knelt on the ground and said with a trembling voice, Tian Anping, the unfilial son of the Tian clan, fought with Lu Shantong of the Fufeng Ryu clan and accidentally killed him. Such an act of going against the law was punishable by death. Fortunately, the emperor was merciful and spared Tian Anping the death penalty. He was only demoted to the inner mansion and locked up for 10 years. In Changming Prefecture, the Tian clan and the Ryu clan made an agreement that the Tian clan would use everything they had to make up for the death of Tianjiao of the Ryu clan. Primordial stones and carriages, precious pearls and dippers, secret techniques, Taoist techniques, and armors should all be given. I, Tian Shili, did not teach my son well and should bear this responsibility. Even if I lose my family's fortune, I should accept it. At that time, the Ryu clan also agreed that this matter would not be mentioned again. Yes. He pressed his hands on the ground and raised his head to look at the direction of the Emperor of Dan. His face was filled with grief and anger. I just received news that Lu Xiao of the Fufeng Ryu clan killed the city guards and has entered the city. Everyone was shocked. Only now did they understand why Marquis Gaochong would be so unwise as to openly clash with Yu Yongqi. Killing the city guards and entering the city was tantamount to declaring war. What other reason could there be for Lu Xiao to choose to enter the city today? It was obviously to kill Tian Anping. Some people looked at Yu Yongqi with less disdain. They did not expect the Fufeng Ryu clan to be so courageous. The Emperor of Dan's voice came from the Emperor of Dan. It was as if the entire sky had collapsed. Xian Huaibua, how do you explain this? Yu Yongqi, who was kneeling on the ground, finally dared to raise his head slowly. His face was covered with tears and snot. He knelt there and cried in front of so many people. The father lost his son, and the clan lost his talent. Generations of hard work were destroyed in one day. 100 years of future was cut with a knife. Your Majesty, how do I explain this? The Emperor of Dan did not know how to respond to this. That day in Changming County, no matter how many reasons there were, it was an indisputable fact that Tian Anping was not sentenced to death for killing Lu Shintong. The Emperor of Dan cherished talents and relied on the Tian family, but the punishment was unfair. Everyone knew about Yu Yongqi's pain. He was a count, so it was inevitable that people would sympathize with him for crying like this. At this time, it was natural for the Prime Minister to step in. The standard to judge whether a Prime Minister was competent or not depended on whether he was good at taking responsibility for the Emperor of Dan. This responsibility was not responsibility, but a scolding. Jiang Rumo said coldly, the matter of that year was already decided, and Yu Yongqi approved of it. One case cannot be considered as two cases. Today, it is Lu Xiao's crime to break into the city. Yu Yongqi propped himself up and knelt there, crying, although Lu Shentong was my son, he was by Lu Xiao's side since he was young. They were half master and half disciple, half father and son. I, Yu Yongqi, am useless and cannot comfort my son. Lu Xiao was in the immortal Ascension realm and suffered for nearly 10 years. That was his choice, and I cannot explain it for him. Your Majesty, he then kowtowed to the Emperor of Dan. Bang! His forehead hit the ground with a loud clang. Lu Xiao's life or death will be decided by the Emperor of Dan. The Ryu clan does not dare to interfere. Yu Yongqi was disrespectful in today's ceremony and made the world laugh. This crime deserves death. Your Majesty, please give me a knife. I will kill myself. Chung Gungsheng narrowed his eyes as he watched the show. There were only two words in his mind, F***CKU. Who said the Ryu clan was not ruthless? Who said the weak willow could only be swayed by the wind? When the Ryu clan decided to be ruthless, no one else could compare. First, Liu Xiao used his immortal ascension realm to drag Tian Onping down with him. Then, there was Yu Yongqi, who wanted to drag Tian Shili down with him. All he did was join in the clamor and put on a posture. It was the ceremony that was disrespectful. The imperial ancestral temple was disrespectful, and he should commit suicide. What about Tian Shili, who took the initiative to make a ruckus and almost attacked? Yu Yongqi was only average and had limited ability, but he was not stupid. Even if he was stupid, he should not be underestimated after 10 years of hatred. Tian Shili wanted to use Liu Zhao's attack as a pretext to gain enough leverage for the Tian clan. This was a qualified political practice. Yu Yongqi had no room to respond. He could not reverse the verdict today, and he could not criticize the Emperor of Dan for being unfair. So, he chose to drag Tian Shili down with him. Xian Huaibua, who was about to be transferred to the main family in the next generation, dragged Marquis Gaochong to his death. The head of the Ryu clan, who was about to die, dragged the head of the Tian family, who was still one of the top families, to his death. No matter how you looked at it, it was not a loss. But how could life and death be calculated so easily? How many people could calmly face it? Yu Yongqi was really impressive today. Even Emperor Qi was silent for a moment. Although Liu Yingqi appeared to be in fear and trepidation, as if he was waiting to be slaughtered, he was not afraid at all. If he wanted to blame the Ryu clan, Yu Yongqi was about to be transferred to the main family. His descendants would not be able to inherit Xian Huaibua. If he wanted to blame Yu Yongqi, he had already taken the initiative to die. How could he blame him? If people were not afraid of death, why should they be afraid of death? He had nothing, and he was not as afraid as Tian Shili. Chapter 1192. As the Prime Minister, Jiang Rumo was the last buffer between the emperor and the officials. Because the emperor had a golden mouth and jade words, there was no room for negotiation once he spoke. However, Yu Yongqi did not explain much to Jiang Rumo. He only asked for the emperor's judgment. This was a direct confrontation with Tian Shili, asking only for life and death. Jiang Rumo could not say anything else. At this time, Tian Shili remained silent. There was no criticism, no rebuttal, no pleading, nothing. Silence, as if he had accepted his fate. This was a smart choice. Yu Yongqi was asking for death. Of course, he wanted to kill in one step, but he also wanted to threaten the emperor with his death. Yu Yongqi had nothing left. He did not care about anything else, as long as he died with Tian Shili. And he wanted to do something different. Compared to the current Yu Yongqi, he was indeed afraid. He was in a luxurious house, had great power, and almost had everything. How could he not be afraid of death? In that case, he would make his fear clearer. People who knew fear were more respectful and obedient. He used his obedience to highlight Yu Yongqi's rebellion. Therefore, under the heavenly power, he was silent. He used his actions to express the sentence, "Your Majesty Fuqi is wise." He also knelt there, waiting for the emperor's judgment. He was the one who could be killed or punished. He had indeed underestimated Yu Yongqi, his intelligence, and his courage by rashly attacking. Now, he had taken the opportunity to fight back, asking for death. He couldn't break this ruthless chess move. However, on the chessboard that was Qi, he and Yu Yongqi were not fighting just for themselves. There was also the existence of a higher consciousness. Therefore, he let go of everything and allowed Emperor Qi to deal with him. He did not believe that a mighty ruler like Emperor Qi would allow his decision to be influenced by others. Even if it was forced by death, it was still forced. Taking a step back, even if Emperor Qi really ordered him and Yu Yongqi to die together, his respectful death was completely different from Yu Yongqi's threatening death. This was the best choice for the Tian family. Emperor Qi had to remember Tian Shili's loyalty and obedience. Only then would he not lose the support of the people. Everyone was waiting for the emperor's decision. This matter involved a hereditary marquis, a hereditary earl, and two famous families in Qi. No one could make the decision for the emperor. The prime minister could not, and neither could the empress, the crown prince, or the princes and princesses. Tianzi did not remain silent for too long. His voice seemed to descend from the nine heavens, extremely dignified. Qin Yangzi, Jiang Wang, who was silently watching the battle between the famous clans, was stunned for a moment. Who am I? What am I doing? What are you calling me for? But even though he was confused, he still reacted very quickly. He cupped his hands and bowed. Your subject is here. We order you to immediately depart to the Great Lake County and bring Lu Xiao back. Emperor Qi's voice was emotionless. Do you dare to go? For an inner palace cultivator to capture a divine descent expert, one who had already made up his mind and disregarded Qi LV, it would naturally require some courage. This was because the current Lu Xiao might not even care if you were Qin Yangzi or a grade 3 Golden Gourd warrior. But Jiang Wang did not show any fear. He did not even hesitate. Your Majesty, with the power of the heavens, why wouldn't I dare to capture a criminal? He only bowed once before leaving the imperial ancestral temple. He stepped on the azure cloud mark and headed straight for the Great Lake County. Good job. Cheng Gung Sheng cheered in his heart. In his eyes, there was no risk at all. Whether Lu Xiao killed Tian Anping or not, his loyalty to the Fufeng Ryu clan was unquestionable. If he dared to resist, he would be risking the safety of the entire Fufeng Ryu clan. In front of a life-and-death crisis, it was hard for people not to hesitate. As the main character of today's ceremony, Jiang Wang's performance at this moment showed his courage and loyalty. It was very eye-catching. As for Jiang Wang, he only asked himself one question. Emperor Qi personally gave the order. Is there a possibility that I can refuse? The answer was clear. Therefore, he did not hesitate and left after receiving the order. As for the pros and cons, he could slowly think about it on the way. Jiang Wang stepped on the azure cloud mark and left. Emperor Qi, who was sitting on the dragon throne, said slowly, Xian Huaibua, Marquis Gaochong, please rise. Yu Yongqi wanted to die, but the emperor avoided the topic and only ordered people to capture Lu Xiao. This in itself was his attitude. First, Lu Xiao's punishment depended on the final result. It depended on whether Tian Anping was dead or not. Secondly, he sent Jiang Wang to let Yu Yongqi and Tian Shili see clearly. When it came to Tianjiao, there were many people in Qi. There was a number one in the world in front of him. He was the champion who fought with the top Tianjiao on the Riverview platform. Therefore, one should not think that Lu Shintong's death was amazing, and one should not think that having Tian Anping in the family was enough. One should think about it carefully. This subject thanks the emperor for his kindness. Tian Shili hurriedly kowtowed and got up after escaping a disaster. Although Yu Yongqi's tears were still wet and his forehead was bleeding, he could not kneel anymore. He choked and said, This subject thanks the emperor for his kindness. The emperor's punishment could not be ignored. The emperor's kindness could not be ignored. The two lords stood on the high platform one after the other. The other officials and nobles avoided them as if they were avoiding the plague. Emperor Di Qi's voice sounded again. Ceremonial officer, what is the punishment for disrespecting the emperor in front of the palace? The ceremonial officer in charge of the hall bowed and said, Your Majesty, there are several punishments. If the emperor does not forgive them, they will be whipped, demoted, or killed. Emperor Qi said, Marquis Gaochong and Xian Huaibua, their ancestors have contributed to the country. I have always thought of them. Although they have disrespected the emperor today, I will forgive them. However, they must be punished. They will be whipped 50 times as a warning to others. The emperor looked at Chao Jie. General Chao, thank you. Chao Jie bowed respectfully. This subject accepts the order. Then he directly raised his hand to Tian Shili and Yu Yongqi, please. The emperor's question had a meaning. He said, disrespected the emperor in front of the palace, and not disrespected the emperor in front of the palace, like Yu Yongqi said when he asked for death. because disrespecting the emperor in front of the palace was offending the previous emperors. In terms of etiquette, the emperor could not forgive the crimes of the previous emperors. The emperor wanted to punish Yu Yongqi and Tian Shili, but he could not kill them, so he asked this question. The ceremonial official clearly understood the emperor's intention. Tian Shili did not say a word. He walked down the platform and onto the square. Taking off his outer and inner garments, he directly knelt down in front of the civil and military officials and the common people who were watching the ceremony. His upper body was naked. This was undoubtedly a great humiliation. Thinking about his status, he had to be punished naked in front of so many people who were far inferior to him. But perhaps this was the best result, so he silently accepted it, just like before. Yu Yongqi's actions were exactly the same, but his expression was even more sorrowful. Chao Jie strode to the bottom of the platform and stretched out his hand. Naturally, someone offered him a wet whip. This whip was a punishment whip, and it was stained with water. This whip was held with a method, and the water was like a needle. He raised his hand, and the whip exploded 3 times in the air, representing the witness of heaven and earth and the sound of magic and beasts. Then the whip fell. Tian Shili, who had the cultivation of a mortal arrival, and Yu Yongqi, who was at the peak of the outer tower, were both hit by this whip and fell to the ground. Their faces were extremely distorted, so they did not cry out in pain. They also gritted their teeth, supported themselves on the ground, and straightened themselves up. In front of the solemn imperial ancestral temple, on the huge square, only the sound of the whip echoed. As for the 2 noble lords, they kept falling down and struggling to get up. This pair of feuds had finally reached a lamentable agreement under such circumstances. Chapter 1193. Jiang Wang stepped on the green clouds and flew swiftly in the Qi domain. There were 2 routes from Linzi to Days County, crossing Lu'an or Shiming. These 2 counties were bordered by Days County. Unlike the last time he went to Qixing Valley, this time Jiang Wang took Lu'an. Naturally, no one stopped him along the way. Jiang Wang only took half an hour to cross into Days County. It was unwise to show extreme speed in front of people, so of course, he also had some reservations. Of course, it looked like he was going all out. There were 18 big and small cities in Days County, and the city was in the center. On the map, the entire Days County was a trapezoid, narrow in the east and wide in the west. Jiang Wang inexplicably thought that since the Tian family was so strict, would they always want to make it into a square? Although Qin Yangzi, who used the instant clear sky immortal technique, was rushing all the way, he was extremely confident and calm. He didn't look like he was going to catch someone, but more like he was going on an excursion. Many cultivators who met him on the way secretly praised him. At that time, Tian Sifu was guarding the city gate in fear and trepidation. His left hand grabbed the saber at his waist, but somehow he couldn't hold it firmly. This damn saber was trembling all the time. He opened his eyes wide and tried to put on the image of a dignified guard. But from time to time, a drop of sweat rolled into his eyes. Every time this happened, he would blink a few times to quickly get rid of the drop of sweat, which made him look a bit funny. Sweat kept coming out on his forehead and the back of his neck. He wasn't the only one who was like this. The guards who were guarding the city gate with him weren't any better either. After another fierce blink, a young and handsome figure suddenly appeared in his field of vision. Tian Sifu thought he was seeing things at first, but when he blinked a few times again, the person was already close. That person strolled in the air, his green robe fluttering in the wind, and his eyes were indescribably clear and bright. A long sword, a white jade, a person. For some reason, Tian Sifu suddenly stopped trembling. He pressed the saber at his waist and asked seriously, "Who are you?" Jiang Wang, who had arrived with his sword in hand, did not respond immediately, because when he rushed to the city, the first thing he saw was not these guards outside the city gates, nor was it this square and orderly city. As they approached from afar, the first thing that entered their field of vision was the city. However, there was another existence that immediately stole everyone's attention. It was a person. A man with long hair and a face covered was hanging above the city gate. This person's body faintly glowed with golden light and a jade-like luster. Shockingly, he was a divinity descent cultivator. Who else could the cultivators of divine descent be in GeoCity? Jiang Wang's heart was in turmoil. He had come to capture Lu Xiao and bring him back to Linzi. In reality, he was no match for Lu Xiao. It was just that he had used his majesty as the Son of Heaven to make Lu Xiao helpless. After careful consideration on the way here, he felt that this was not a big problem. Lu Xiao was not a lunatic. He had things that he cherished and wanted to protect, so he knew how to respect. It was not that Jiang Wang had not thought about what he would see when he arrived at the city. The Ryu clan of Fufeng had accumulated deep hatred for nearly 10 years. Perhaps they would urge Lu Xiao to go on a killing spree in the city. In any case, the result would be death. He might not only kill Tian Anping. Jiang Wang thought that he would see a ruined city. Perhaps he would find Lu Xiao in the ruins and deliver the Son of Heaven's order to capture him and bring him back to the capital. However, he had never imagined that the scene before him would occur. With his divinity descent cultivation, Lu Xiao had chosen to kill Tian Anping when the Tian clan's powerhouse was outside and the great marsh county was empty. This should have been a sure thing. He himself also thought that Tian Anping would not be lucky. However, because of the fear in his heart, he guessed that Tian Anping might be able to escape. But now Lu Xiao was hanging above the city gate. How is this possible? This completely went against the common sense of cultivation. He was the world's #1 inner palace cultivator, but it was difficult for him to survive in front of a divinity descent cultivator. Tian Anping, who was also locked in the inner palace realm. How is this possible? Did the Tian clan have a hidden divinity descent cultivator? Perhaps it was a great formation or a trump card. Or perhaps Tian Anping had already broken the ban and secretly broken through? Not to mention how he did it. Did the great Marsh Tian clan really dare to ignore the Qi Emperor's prestige? Jiang Wang suppressed the waves in his heart and stepped on the ground, announcing in a loud voice, "I am the Imperial Blue Goat, 3rd grade Golden Melon Warrior Jiang Wang. I am here on orders to capture Lu Xiao and bring him back to the capital." In any case, he was here on orders and could not lose the prestige of the Son of Heaven. Naturally, he was fearless. He glanced at the person hanging above the city gate. His aura was still there, but he was motionless. Then, he looked at the guard and asked, "Is this person Lu Xiao?" Tian Sifu hesitated for a moment before answering, "Why, yes." Jiang Wang did not waste time and said directly, "I will take him away now. And I want to find out where Tian Anping was or why Lu Xiao had become like this." It had nothing to do with him. The order he received was to capture Lu Xiao and bring him back to the capital. He only needed to do this matter well. Tian Sifu and the others looked at each other. They did not dare to stop him, nor did they have the right to make the decision. Jiang Wang paid no attention to him as well, and he directly soared up into the sky, as if he was ascending a flight of stairs in the void to arrive before Lu Xiao, who was hung up in the air with his hair covering his face. His hands were clasped together, tied by a rope, and hung on the city gate. His breathing was weak, but it was still there. Jiang Wang did not immediately put Lu Xiao down. Instead, he first brushed aside the man's hair. He had to first confirm Lu Xiao's condition so that he could be prepared. This was to prevent him from being unable to explain himself if something happened along the way. He then saw a dull face with round eyes and slightly parted lips. There was even saliva dripping from the corner of his mouth. What had happened to a divine descent cultivator? His 5 senses sealed? His soul damaged? Or were the guards in front of the city gate afraid of? Jiang Wang carefully observed Lu Xiao's eyes, but he could not see any signs of life in them. He was still alive, but his essence, energy, and spirit seemed to have been sucked out. No matter how Jiang Wang observed him, his head was slightly lowered, and he did not move at all. Jiang Wang frowned, stretched out his index finger, and pressed it between the man's eyebrows. All of a sudden, Lu Xiao's hair shot out like venomous snakes and lunged forward in unison. Jiang Wang directly jumped back and landed on the ground. Who allowed you to move? A voice said so. This should be a question. However, because the speaker did not show a questioning tone, but instead seemed to be stating a statement, this sentence produced a fatal sense of oppression. Or perhaps that sense of oppression was only because of that person. Jiang Wang looked into the depths of the city gate. Inside the city gate, there stood a barefoot man wearing a thin garment. His eyes were blank, as if he was in a daze. Tian Anping. At this moment, the black hair on Lu Zhao's head that was as sinister as snakes suddenly fell down and covered Lu Zhao's face again. If he died with his hair covering his face, he would be too ashamed to see others after death. But Lu Zhao was clearly still alive. Jiang Wang pressed his hand on the long sword at his waist, looked directly at Tian Anping, and said slowly, "Who allowed me to move? I think I have already said it once." Tian Anping raised his eyes and glanced at him. There was some confusion in his eyes, as if he was surprised by his courage. "I have seen you in the Seven Stars Valley." He said this, and then asked, "Who are you?" It seemed that it was only now that he began to take Jiang Wang seriously. He did not know if it was a blessing or a misfortune to be valued by Tian Anping. However, Jiang Wang only said, "I have already introduced myself once." If you did not hear clearly, you might as well ask your subordinates later. Now it is my turn to ask you. He was right in front of the city gate, holding his sword with his head held high, facing Tian Anping and the entire city. His eyes were sharp. "Tian Anping, do you want to defy the decree?" Chapter 1194. Jiang Wang's question was forceful, and his expression was stern. The guards outside the city gate were so shocked that their hearts trembled and they almost knelt down. As the emperor's envoy, he had his own authority. Jiang Wang stood here alone, but behind him was the entire Deqi Empire. Of course, the Deqi Empire also included this small city. Who wouldn't be shocked in the face of the emperor's wrath? Only Tian Anping, who was standing at the city gate, tilted his head as if he didn't understand. Then he said, "You have an edict. Come in and announce it." At this moment, he and Jiang Wang were facing each other across the city gate. One was in the city, the other was outside the city. He invited Jiang Wang to enter the city. Jiang Wang looked into his eyes. After some confusion, he only saw coldness and madness in the depths of his eyes. The wind in the city was also oppressive, hovering near the city gate. There was not a single pedestrian on the straight street behind Tian Anping. The shops on both sides seemed to be closed today. Jiang Wang was expressionless and only said, "I've already announced the edict. It's up to you whether you accept it or not. Now, I'm going to lock Lu Zhao up and return to the capital. If you want to resist the edict, come out and test your sword." He directly pulled out the Sauvignon longsword. It was like autumn water shining under the sun. The rope that was hanging Lu Zhao on top of the city gate broke without a sound, and Lu Zhao's entire body fell to the ground. Lu Zhao's left hand caught him. He held Lu Zhao in one hand and the sword in the other, coldly looking at Tian Anping. He didn't turn around and leave. After all, not many people dare to leave their backs to Tian Anping. Now the four-way city was silent. Tian Anping was at the city gate, quietly looking at him. The city guards outside the city gate watched all of this silently. They even held their breaths and didn't dare to make a sound. Jiang Wang wouldn't enter the city, and it seemed that Tian Anping didn't plan to come out either. Therefore, Jiang Wang began to walk backward while holding Lu Zhao. He walked neither fast nor slow. Every step was at the same speed. He maintained his confidence, but he also maintained his fear. During the entire process of retreating, he and Tian Anping's gaze never left each other. He retreated 19 steps. This was the 19 steps he had taken while maintaining his immortal state. Only then did he gracefully turn around. With one hand holding a person and the other holding a sword, his green robe fluttered in the wind as he stepped onto the green clouds and ascended into the sky. Guard Tian Sifu looked at the departing back of the Kingmaker as if he was looking at a god. This was the first time he saw someone who dared to oppose young Master Tian Anping. Even the elders of the clan, and even Even the clan leader found it hard to conceal their fear of young Master Onping. Not to mention the other members of the Tian family. Today, Lu Xiao came with such a ferocious aura, and he even had the cultivation of a god descending realm cultivator. In the end, he was still hung on the city gate. He found it hard to imagine what kind of person could be so arrogant in front of Lord Onping. Qing Yangzi? Tian Sifu could not help but look back. The figure of young Master Onping behind the city gate had already disappeared. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed that his brothers who were on duty with him all breathed a sigh of relief. This day was too long. Tian Sifu had the emotions of an ordinary city gate guard. Jiang Wang, who was carrying Lu Xiao away, also heaved a sigh of relief. Before seeing Tian Onping, he had many guesses about Lu Xiao's situation. He had guessed that the Tian family had some hidden expert. However, when he saw Tian Onping, the sudden sense of crisis clearly told him that Tian Onping was the one who created Lu Xiao's current situation. When he had first seen Tian Onping in the Seven Stars Valley, he had felt a deep sense of fear. That fear was definitely not because he had sabotaged the Tian family's operations on planet Yin, or because of Tian Onping's crazy past. Instead, it was because Tian Onping had an extremely dangerous temperament that seemed to be equivalent to danger itself. The pressure he felt from Tian Onping was something he had never felt from any other inner palace cultivator. After all, Tian Onping had been defeated from the god descending realm, so he naturally had some peculiarities that inner palace cultivators did not. He could not be measured by inner palace cultivators. Lei Zhanqian was a conceited and arrogant person. Even after being defeated by him several times, he could still fight with confidence. Back in the Seven Stars Valley, Tian Onping had been an inner palace cultivator, yet he hadn't said a word. That was enough to show how terrifying he was. But now Lu Xiao, who wanted to kill Tian Onping, and Lu Xiao, who was in the Divine Advent realm, were in such a state. No matter how confident Jiang Wang was, he didn't think that he would be able to gain an advantage over Tian Onping. Tian Onping's invitation had been very oppressive. Everything that had happened outside the city gates today would definitely be known by everyone in Qi. If he cowered today and tarnished the emperor's reputation, the consequences would be obvious. But if he really entered the city, it would be tantamount to betting his life on whether Tian Onping would go crazy. Betting on whether a lunatic would go crazy was dangerous no matter how he thought about it. He had chosen to take Lu Xiao away and bet that Tian Onping would not leave the city. The Tian Onping he had seen in the Seven Stars Valley was different from the Tian Onping he had seen today. Back then, his hands and feet were shackled like a prisoner. But today, his hands and feet were empty. From the beginning to the end, Tian Onping had been standing inside the city gates. When he turned hostile, he had also invited Jiang Wang to enter the city. He guessed that Tian Onping, who was in an unknown state, would only be able to leave the city with those shackles on. He seemed to have made the right bet. Although he looked confident and fearless as he carried Lu Xiao away, if Tian Onping really chased him out of the city gates, he would definitely leave Lu Xiao behind and run away. With strength, one should do what one should do. She had many experts who could suppress this person, so there was no need for him to take this risk. Shackling Lu Xiao was indeed not dangerous, but the prerequisite was that the opponent was Lu Xiao. If the person he had to face was Tian Onping, it was impossible to predict whether it would be dangerous or not. This was why people like Tian Onping were so fearful. It could be said that he had accurately walked on a line on this trip to the city. He knew his gains and losses well in his heart. At this time, he had already walked far away. Jiang Wang suddenly felt something in his heart. His eyes turned red as he looked back. It seemed to be some kind of declaration. Under the gaze of the eye of Qianyang, the square city had thousands of densely packed shadows of rooms in the air. Every room was the same. Just like the inner mansion, Jiang Wang immediately remembered that when he first came to the city, he even stayed in the city for a night. At that time, he felt that the rooms in the city were very similar to the rooms in the depths of the inner mansion. At that time, he even wondered if the Tian family's management of the city was imitating the inner mansion, because they were all too similar. He had opened up 3,000 rooms in the depths of each inner mansion, and there was no difference between them. His fear of this city was also one of the reasons why he was unwilling to enter the city. But now, there seemed to be an answer to that fear. Tian Anping had used some unknown method to refine the rooms in the inner mansion into the city. The entire city was his inner mansion. How could the people living in this city not be afraid? It was equivalent to their life and death in the hands of others, and all their secrets could be seen at a glance. It seemed to explain why Lu Xiao, who was in the divine descent realm, had become like this. It was just like how he had the confidence to face any opponent in his Tong Tian palace. How could an outsider fight with Tian Anping in his inner mansion? Moreover, this inner mansion was so different, and this Tian Anping was so different. Chapter 1195. Your Majesty, 50 lashes have been completed. On the square in front of the Imperial Ancestral Temple, Chao Jie's whipping had finally ended. While it was a form of torture for the person being tortured, it was also a form of terror for the people who were watching the torture. At this moment, the two lords kneeling on the ground had the same deathly pale complexion. His bare upper body was also covered in intertwined purple whip scars, looking as ferocious as a snake mark. There were 5 levels of whipping, and 50 was the highest. In principle, this was the lightest punishment. However, if the executioner wanted to do it, it was not difficult to whip the victim to death. Chao Jie stretched out his right hand and waited for the eunuch to take the whip away before returning to the platform. Emperor Qi said, "Rise." Tian Shili and Yu Yongqi put on their clothes and stood up shakily. Their cultivation was not equal. As the executioner of the whipping, Chao Jie controlled his strength well. The whip on their bodies was also limited to the level of the god Descends and the outer tower. Therefore, both of them were on the verge of collapsing. The emperor said, "If you can't stand properly, you can go and rest." "Thank you, Your Majesty." Tian Shili cupped his hands and said, "I can stand properly." Yu Yongqi also said, "I also plop." Before he could finish his sentence, he had already fallen to the ground. However, it was as if the ground was stabbed with a knife. The moment he fell, he immediately bounced back up. It was unknown where the strength came from. "I can stand properly." He gritted his teeth and said. Qin Yangzi went to get Lu Xiao and had yet to return. The matter between the Tian family and the Ryu family was not over yet. At this moment, no one was willing to leave. If they stayed, they still had a chance to fight. If they left, they could only wait for fate. The emperor did not say anything else. The officials were also silent. In front of the Imperial Ancestral Temple, everyone was waiting for the result. Not long after, a eunuch walked to the platform where the commoners were and whispered something. Most of the commoners left on the spot, probably because it was time to leave. There were also some who stayed. The officials were not so lucky. They had to wait here for the result. The sun gradually shifted. This process was simply too slow, until that green-clothed and sword-wielding figure slowly walked into the square while carrying a person. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. No matter what the result was, there was finally a result. The anxious people first noticed Qin Yangzi, and then they noticed the person in his hand. The person was facing down, his long hair hanging loosely, and his hands were tied together by a broken rope. Jiang Wang carried him by the belt at the back of his waist and walked over. Some people couldn't help but frown. No matter what, Lu Xiao was still a divinity ascension stage expert. Experts needed to have dignity. Don't you know how Jiang Wang is going to capture Lu Xiao? Did he really think that he could look down on Shenlin just because he was the best in the world? Lu Xiao, a grand ascension cultivator, was lifted up like a chicken. This was truly displeasing. Xian Huaibua and Yu Yongqi also felt a great sense of humiliation. Today, he was naked and whipped. He was a divinity ascension stage expert of the Ryu clan, and yet he was being held up like this. The face of the Ryu clan had been trampled into the mud. However, when he looked at Jiang Wang, he realized that he wasn't angry. It wasn't that this matter wasn't worth his anger. It wasn't that he didn't dare to be angry because of Jiang Wang, who was in the limelight today, but he suddenly realized that he couldn't be angry. The Ryu clan was already like this. The Ryu clan was already like this. It was normal to be trampled on a few times. He thought that he should accept his fate. Marquis Gaochong, Tian Shili's gaze was completely different. However, his gaze didn't fall on Jiang Wang. Instead, he stared at Lu Xiao with intense, killing intent. He wanted to drink Lu Xiao's blood and eat his flesh. Jiang Wang didn't care about how others looked at him. He walked calmly in the huge square. His sword was still in its scabbard. Before entering the city, he had already sheathed his sword. This was his attitude. He could have entered the city with his sword and shown that he had confronted Tian Anping. If the emperor asked, it wouldn't have been difficult to give Tian Anping some trouble. However, would the emperor be happy to see this? Secondly, he didn't have any enmity with the Tian family, regardless of what happened on Planet Een. The confrontation at the city gate was due to the imperial edict. He had no reason to act as Tian Anping's opponent. He didn't need to, nor was he willing to, become enemies with a first-rate aristocratic family. He walked to the center of the square, put Lu Xiao down, and helped him stand up. Lu Xiao stood there in a daze. At this moment, everyone could see that Lu Xiao's condition wasn't right. Jiang Xingyang wasn't deliberately humiliating him. Lu Xiao couldn't do anything about it, and could only be carried away. Lu Yingqi, whose aura was very weak, suddenly took a step forward, but stopped abruptly. He didn't dare to make any more offensive moves. Jiang Wang bowed and said, "Your Majesty, Jiang Wang didn't disappoint you." "Qin Yangzi," Jiang Rumo asked, "what happened to Lu Xiao?" Of course, he could see Lu Xiao's condition. Therefore, he was asking how Lu Xiao had become like this. "I don't know either," Jiang Wang said. "When I rushed to Ji City, Lu Xiao was already like this, hanging from the city gate. I untied him and brought him back to Linzi without any delay." All the nobles and officials present were moved. Lu Xiao hadn't tied himself up. Instead, he'd been subdued before Jiang Wang had arrived. Moreover, his mind seemed to have been damaged. "Then what about Tian Anping?" Jiang Rumo asked. Jiang Wang said, "Unharmed." Tian Shili's eyes burst with extreme joy. It was unknown whether it was genuine or just a facade. Yu Yongqi immediately turned around and bowed to the emperor. "Your Majesty, the Tian family broke the agreement." Tian Anping dared to disobey orders and break through. His reaction could be said to be fast, but it was already too slow. From the beginning, Lu Xiao had made a mistake by forcing his way into Ji City. Yu Yongqi's struggles at the ceremony today were like a miniature version of his struggles in the past 10 years. He had exhausted his not-so-outstanding talents to restore the glory of the Ryu clan. However, the death of Grandpa Lu and Lu Shantong had already broken the foundation of the Ryu clan. No matter how he struggled, he was powerless. The emperor asked, "Qin Jiangzi, in your opinion, what is Tian Anping's cultivation level?" Jiang Wang said impartially, "He should still be in the inner mansion realm. However, it has exceeded my understanding of the inner mansion realm. In my opinion, he seems to have refined the inner mansion room into Ji City." In fact, the scene of the inner mansion room being emptied was also shown to him by Tian Anping. It seemed to be for his explanation in front of the imperial ancestral temple. In this regard, Tian Anping wasn't completely crazy. The nobles and officials in the square were shocked beyond words. Tian Anping's golden body jade marrow was broken, the Saint Tower was destroyed, and he was suppressed for 10 years. However, he was still able to develop new tricks in the inner mansion realm. There were so many talents in the world. If one only wanted to be new, it wasn't difficult. The difficult thing was to be new and strong enough. How could Tian Anping not be strong to be able to defeat Lu Xiao, who was in the immortal descent realm? Starting from the inner mansion, outer mansion, and immortal descent was the cultivation path that the ancestors of the human race had forged for countless years. In Jiang Rumo's opinion, Tian Anping didn't develop a new path. It was more like he was limited by the inner mansion realm and skipped the limit of cultivation to increase his combat strength in advance. Considering that he had achieved the immortal descent realm and was peerless, It was possible for him to do this. As for the specific situation, he couldn't judge because he hadn't seen it with his own eyes. It was just that the methods used in the intermansion realm were indeed incredible. Above the Pill Emperor, the Emperor said, "You came on behalf of me." Since Tian Anping didn't break through, he didn't go against the order. As for Lu Xiao, Yu Yangqi looked over in confusion and pleading. At this moment, Lu Xiao stood there in a daze. His mouth was slightly open and his eyes were wide open. It was as if he was still trapped in some kind of fear. As a cultivator in the immortal descent realm, he didn't know who he should be afraid of. It was truly a tragedy. Bring Xian Huaibo back and take care of him. The Emperor sighed imperceptibly. He stood up and left his seat. Han Ling, who had been standing silently, quickly chased after him and announced, "Let's go." Yu Yangqi knelt down again and kowtowed heavily on the ground. "Thank you for your grace, your majesty." Chapter 1196. Are you Jiang Wang, the one who won first place at the Yellow River Conference? Swordsman Ning's letter asked in the great illusionary realm. Before Jiang Wang could reply, he had already received an invitation for a challenge. Of course, he wouldn't avoid it. He drove the Sword Discourse Arena straight into the Milky Way. After experiencing the World Conference on the Observation River platform, seeing the two Sword Discourse Arenas together made him feel nostalgic. Looking closely at the dazzling Milky Way, wasn't it another kind of Milky Way? However, humans use the Observation River platform to suppress the Milky Way. What do they use to suppress the Milky Way? The Void Continent, the Forest Ocean Origin World, Planet Een. Just the seven-star secret realm was connected to so many outer worlds. There should be as many outer worlds as there were stars in the sky. Why was it called the modern world? While he was pondering, his opponent, Swordsman Ning, had already arrived. His absolute sword art was peerless. In terms of swordsmanship, he didn't lose to Tianjiao at the Yellow River Conference. Jiang Wang tested his Pride sword art and Yearning sword art. Then, he used the Hermetic sword art to end the battle on the spot. It wasn't because his Hermetic sword art was superior to Swordsman Ning's absolute sword art. This move of the human sword should be the top threshold of the Intermansion realm. It was only slightly better than the absolute sword art in this realm. The most important reason was that he had fought Swordsman Ning too many times. Swordsman Ning's choice wasn't surprising. However, his strength after the Observation River platform was unfamiliar to Swordsman Ning. He waited for a while. Swordsman Ning issued another challenge. Of course, Swordsman Ning couldn't bear to lose in swordsmanship. This time, Jiang Wang directly spread out the Fire Realm, activated the Sword Immortal, and activated the Absolute Sword Art. The battle ended immediately. The unyielding Swordsman Ning didn't issue another challenge this time. A paper crane flew over. When he opened it, there were only 4 words. "It's really you." "Sorry about that," Jiang Wang replied humbly. During the time he participated in the Yellow River meeting, he had already fallen from his position as the #1 disciple of the Great Void Intermansion. However, it didn't matter. The current #1 disciple of the Great Void Intermansion should have been defeated by him. He didn't mean to destroy Swordsman Ning's confidence. He just wanted to see how big the gap was between him after he won the Battle of the Yellow River and before he went to the river observation platform. Coincidentally, Swordsman Ning was a good benchmark. After waiting for a while, there was no reply from Swordsman Ning. He must have left the great illusionary land. On the other hand, another blue paper crane flew over. It was Zhuo Guangshu's letter. If he could give an and Qingyu a moon key, it would be much more convenient for him to write letters in the future. He was afraid that an An's letters would come too frequently, and he would be too busy cultivating to reply. Of course, he had no idea how to get the moon key. Next time, if I have the chance, I should ask Suzafu. With that in mind, he unfolded the paper crane in his hand. The letter was very short, with only 8 words. "Congratulations, #1 in the world." Jiang Wang stroked his chin. This congratulation should have come a long time ago. Was the news in Chu so bad? I don't know if he knows that I helped this kid teach Xiangbei a lesson. While his thoughts were in a mess, he wrote back, "Hey, you know about it too?" I didn't want to say. He wrote a few thousand words. He wrote quickly and said all the things that he didn't want to say. After all, Jiang was young and didn't have a deep understanding of the world situation. Even if he explained it in detail, it would be hard for him to understand the weight of the number one in the world. Zhuo Guangshu didn't have to worry about this. This guy came from a good family, was knowledgeable, and had a high cultivation level. He knew very well how powerful the number one in the Battle of the Yellow River was. When the blue paper crane flew back, its wings seemed to have become much heavier. It was rare to see such a ridiculous thin piece of paper. At this moment, Zhuo Guangshu, who was far away in Chu, looked at the long letter in his hand and had the urge to tear it up on the spot. It was inconvenient on the way back, so he wrote the congratulatory letter after returning to Chu. He wanted to chat today and thank him in a roundabout way, but he wasn't in the mood at all. What do you mean by you know too? How can I not know? I saw it clearly. Good Lord, I saw it with my own eyes, and you described it to me in words. Help me remember? You even described it from the first move. Why don't you start from yourself? No. What do you mean by, I saw North Xiang's weakness with a casual glance? What do you mean by Qin Jijin cried bitterly and begged me to let go? TSK? Do you think I'm blind? Zhuo Guangshu wrote expressionlessly. It's too long, I won't read it. When he received the duel invitation, the young man laughed and left the great illusionary land smugly. There was still some distance between eastern Xi and southern Chu. Fortunately, the great illusionary land covered the world and erased the distance in a sense. In the past, it wasn't that no one had been able to do this. In fact, there were many people who could do it, but they were all peerless powerhouses. One of the meanings of the great illusionary land was that many people with ordinary cultivation levels could connect thousands of miles away and ignore the existence of distance through the great illusionary land. Perhaps ordinary people could do this in the future. This thought flashed through Jiang Wang's mind. He shook his head at the letter in his hand and condemned young people nowadays. Then he left the great illusionary land. Of course, he didn't want to show off in front of the child. He just didn't want to make the matter of him putting the flame flower on North Xiang's face too serious and affect his relaxed time with Zhuo Guangshu. At this time, Lord Jiang was enjoying a rare peace in his mansion in Linzi's Yaowang Lane. The mansion given by the emperor was noble and magnificent. The layout of the mansion was needless to say. Yaowang Lane was a place where high officials and nobles gathered, and it was far from Yuli Lane. From his simplest point of view, one of the guards on duty in Yaowang Lane must be a transcendent master in every 5 people. This ratio was even higher than that of many elite troops. As for Yuli Square, there were probably only 4 or 5 transcendent cultivators in charge of it. Theoretically speaking, the people who lived in Yuli Square often needed the protection of these guards more than the people who lived in Yaowang Square. Among the big shots who lived in Yaowang Square, there were 2 names that Jiang Wang had heard of. One was Count Shuafeng, Bao Yi, and the other was Xie Huaiyan, the minister of the imperial court. Count Shuafeng aside, Jiang Wang had seen his 2 sons, Bao Boizhao and Bao Zhongqing. Jiang Wang didn't expect that they would become neighbors with Xie Baoshu, but it was normal. Although Linzi was very big, it was still crowded for the people of the Deqi Empire, which dominated the eastern region. In the real core area of Linzi City, every inch of land was filled with Daoyuan stones. It was inevitable that the high officials and nobles would be crowded together and see each other all the time. Of course, that was the case. It was difficult for the Jiang Mansion, which was located at the edge of Yaowang Lane, to see the Xie Mansion, which was located in the core area. After all, Linzi was very big. Although it was a rare piece, Jiang Wang wouldn't let himself be idle. He would not slack off at all in his cultivation. That was why he entered the great illusionary land at this time. After today's sword test, Jiang Wang explored the inner mansion in his room for a while and carefully sorted out the isolated island of heaven and earth. Then, he slowly opened the door and walked out. It was time to go to the emperor's treasury to choose a supreme Taoist technique. He still had an inner mansion level magic item in the emperor's treasury. Chapter 1197. The emperor's treasury was also located in the Qi Palace, and it was an important place. Yung Genzuan's yellow-level Dao technique was directly taken out from the treasury. It was hard to say if it was suitable for him. Yung Genzuan himself did not lack powerful Dao techniques. Jiang Wang's yellow-level Dao technique could be selected from the treasury. Of course, he had to choose the one that suited him the most. Dao techniques were generally divided into 4 grades and 12 ranks, including all the Dao techniques before Advent of the Gods. Dao techniques that surpassed the 4 grades and 12 ranks were further divided into 4 ranks: Heaven, Earth, Mystic, and Yellow. From this perspective, it could be seen that there was a gap between Advent of the Gods. Therefore, the result of the battle between Tian Anping and Lu Xiao was particularly shocking. Even if he had once entered God's Advent and had the vision of a genuine God's Advent, perhaps he still had some of God's Advent's techniques, this battle still felt unreal. Jiang Wang pondered for a long time and discussed it with Cheng Gung Sheng, Li Longchuan, and Yin Fu. In the end, the final point was still Tian Anping's strange inner palace. Unfortunately, although he was curious, he did not want to go to the city to take a closer look. He could only put his curiosity aside. Generally speaking, the cultivation threshold of yellow-level Dao techniques was Advent of the Gods. The cultivation threshold of yellow-level Dao techniques was absolute enlightenment. However, there were those who were born with different meridians, those who could create high-level Dao techniques, or those who had other talents. There was also a possibility that they could master it in advance. For example, Jiang Wang, who was in the inner palace realm, had mastered the 8 notes burning the sea, an A-grade Dao technique. With the support of the true Samadhi fire, the fire world technique was close to transcendent level. Of course, divine powers were different. Secret techniques that were mixed with the power of divine powers could not be confused with other Dao techniques. As Jiang Wang had already informed Qiu Ji beforehand, he saw Qiu Ji waiting for him outside the palace gates. He was wearing the official uniform of the ceremony directorate and had a kind temperament. He was full of smiles and did not have the slightest impatience. Jiang Wang quickly went forward and bowed. "How can I trouble you to wait for me?" Qiu Ji smiled and said, "I've also just arrived." As he said this, he turned around and said, "Qin Yangzi, please come this way." All along, he had shown enough kindness to Jiang Wang. A eunuch holding a brush was waiting outside the palace gate. How could it be an ordinary sight? They had the authority to write imperial edicts on behalf of the emperor. To a certain extent, they could also represent the emperor. He attached great importance to Jiang Wang. Jiang Wang didn't become arrogant because of this. Instead, his attitude became even more modest. "You go first, eunuch. I'll follow your lead." The tall and mighty guards stood silently at the palace gates. They didn't give the world-famous Jiang Qingyang a second glance. Speaking of which, Jiang Wang, a third-rank Golden Gourd warrior, also had the duty of guarding the imperial palace. Of course, if he was on duty, he would be guarding the emperor's sleeping palace or the Violet Extreme Hall. Without the emperor's orders, he silently acted as a guard of honor. As soon as the emperor gave the order, he would hammer the guilty official to death. Of course, this was just a saying, and it would almost never happen. Jiang Wang didn't look sideways. He followed behind Qiu Ji and walked into the palace gates. The location of the emperor's inner treasury couldn't be compared to the abandoned greenstone palace. There was a guard every 5 steps and a sentry every 10 steps. The security was especially tight. Qiu Ji walked in front and slightly turned his body. He said with a smile, "Last time when I accompanied Qin Yangzi to the library, there weren't many people fighting over it. This time, I don't know how many people are fighting to come and wait. It was Eunuch Han who told me to come because I was familiar with Qin Yangzi. How many people are envious?" No one didn't like to hear flattery, unless you were as unnatural as Jiang Wang's flattery of Chao Jia. Qiu Ji obviously knew this well. When he flattered, it was called moisturizing. Although Jiang Wang was embarrassed to receive it, he relaxed a lot. "Eunuch Han, you're too serious. Among the internal officials, you're already a top figure. It's actually my luck to be able to meet you." The two flattered each other for a while. As they spoke, they arrived at their destination. In theory, the emperor's inner treasury was the emperor's private property. The treasures hidden within were naturally precious. The internal funds were often used for the emperor's pleasure. However, the current Emperor Qi often used the internal funds to supplement the national treasury. It was no wonder that the court called him a virtuous person, with Qiu accompanying them. They saved a lot of trouble. The two went straight into the emperor's private library. Jade light platforms, shaped like hourglasses, spread out in their line of sight. Each jade light platform represented a yellow-level Dao technique. They were as dense as a forest. The platforms were covered with flowing light, making it hard for people to see what was inside. However, on the pillars, there was an introduction to the Dao technique inscribed. It was a dazzling array. Jiang Wang was dazzled by the choices. Yellow-level Dao techniques were already at the god's arrival level. Although he couldn't grasp them now, he should make preparations in advance. After all, he wasn't like those aristocratic sons with deep backgrounds who had secret techniques to cultivate at a certain level. He already had a flame flower incineration as a reserve. Therefore, he needed to choose a new yellow-level Dao technique. It would be best if it complemented the flame flower incineration. After looking around for a long time, Qiu said, "Qin Yangzi, do you need help?" The eye of Qianyang that he obtained from the National Treasury was very useful. It wasn't that Jiang Wang didn't count on Qiu this time. However, he didn't have such good intentions. Secondly, he wasn't sure if Qiu knew enough about the emperor's secret library. Hearing this, he immediately said, Jiang Wang couldn't ask for more. Qiu smiled and said, "Qin Yangzi, why don't you tell me what you need? It's best if it's a Dao technique that restrains enemies." Jiang Wang's thinking was very clear. Qiu thought for a while and smiled. "It's a coincidence. There's a Dao technique that suits your requirements." He walked past the jade light platforms and stopped after 19 steps. "It's this one." Jiang Wang took a closer look and realized what Qiu meant by coincidence. This yellow-level Dao technique was left behind by Old Yang. It was called Dragon Tiger. The jade light platform inscribed, "A person's spine is a dragon and can lead the wind to become a tiger. Make the dragon coil, make the tiger crouch, and the person becomes a prisoner." At the end, it said, this technique was inherited from the old imperial family of Lu. From the inscription, the so-called dragon tiger actually meant to lock the dragon and imprison the tiger. Jiang Wang thought for a while and said, Jiang Wang naturally trusts eunuch Qiu's foresight. I'll choose this technique. The pale, beardless Qiu gave off a very peaceful feeling when he smiled. He took out a token and pressed it on the jade light platform. The shield of flowing light instantly shone with a myriad of colors, and treasure light scattered everywhere. "Just put your hand in," Qiu said. Jiang Wang reached his hand in. He couldn't see what was inside the shield of flowing light, but when he put his hand in, complicated information flowed into his heart. Not only was there Dragon Tiger, but there were also the analysis and application of this technique from past generations of experts. After a long while, Jiang Wang came back to his senses. "How is it?" Qiu asked with a smile. Jiang Wang said, "It's too wonderful for words." Old Yang was indeed a powerful empire that had once unified a region. In the cultivation world where Dao techniques changed so quickly, neither the eye of Qianyang nor Dragon Tiger were outdated. They still made Jiang Wang feel that they were exquisite beyond words. Qiu smiled slightly. As long as Qin Yangzi is satisfied. Jiang Wang had never known eunuch Qiu's cultivation level, but now it seemed that he was at least in the immortal ascension realm. And there were 7 other eunuchs like him. There were hidden dragons and crouching tigers among the internal officials. The two left the technique library and went to the armory. This time, he didn't ask for Qiu's help. He chose by himself for a long time, even longer than the time spent in the technique library. In the end, he chose a gold-threaded robe. This inner palace-level robe had strong defense and was very beautiful. He had chosen it especially for an inn, and now in Linzi, he didn't want too many people to know of an inn's existence. Xiaoji didn't ask any questions. The distance was very precise. It made one feel relaxed and wouldn't be offended. After Jiang Wang put away the gold-threaded robe, he said with a smile, "Qing Yangzi, it's time to go back." Jiang Wang looked reluctantly at the closed door of the armory and sighed. "Let's go." He didn't know when he would come back again. After seeing Deqi's national treasury and the emperor's treasury, Jiang Wang thought that he was used to seeing the world. In the future, he wouldn't be dazzled by some so-called treasures. Qiuji walked Jiang Wang out of the palace gates and then left with a smile on his face. Jiang Wang walked a few steps alone. Suddenly, he looked up and saw an old man standing in front of him. Qing Yangzi. The old man wore a light black eunuch robe. He stood in a corner of the palace gates and seemed to be about to melt into the dark sky. He bowed to Jiang Wang. "My palace lord invites you." Chapter 1198. There were deep wrinkles on the old man's face. He wasn't stooped, but his eyes were dark, as if they were stained with shadows. The palace guard were not far behind him, and Xiuji had just left. This place was still Deqi's palace, and there were many powerful cultivators guarding it. But Jiang Wang still felt a sense of danger. The old man faintly emitted a sense of danger, but it wasn't directed at him. Jiang Wang asked, "Which palace master?" "Changsheng," the old man said. "The palace master of Changsheng, Jiang Wuqi." Why would this prince, who was most similar to his highness, suddenly invite him? Because of Zhang Yong? Because of Huanghe? Because of Jiang Wuyo? Jiang Wang thought of many things in an instant. He could have refused. He now had the right to refuse the summons of any prince. Even the 11th prince, who was once the most favored by Emperor Qi. But he just nodded. "Since the 11th prince has invited me, please lead the way." Although he had met Jiang Wuqi a few times, the process was not pleasant. But he didn't have any ill feelings toward Jiang Wuqi. On the contrary, he was curious. The old man nodded, then turned and led Jiang Wang a few steps forward. He stopped in front of a soft sedan leaning against the palace wall. "Qing Yangzi, please enter the sedan." As he spoke, he lifted the curtain for Jiang Wang. Jiang Wang glanced inside. The decorations were indeed grand, but it was empty. "I thought the 11th prince was in the sedan," Jiang Wang said casually. He didn't enter the sedan. The old man said, "The palace master wants to see you openly, without any hidden agenda. Of course, you are in the Changxing Palace." This was to reassure Jiang Wang. "I see that the 11th prince is also an upright person." Jiang Wang smiled and bent down to sit in the sedan. The curtain was lowered, for sedan bearers lifted the sedan gently and began to move. As they moved, there was no tremor. Jiang Wang opened a small window and felt the evening breeze in Linzi City. Of course, he did not miss the situation outside the sedan. The old man dressed in a black eunuch uniform followed beside the sedan chair with his hands clasped together. Wrapping one's hands in one's sleeves was a habit formed during the cold winter to keep warm. However, it was still July, and the weather was far from cold. Moreover, with this old man's strength, he should have long been immune to both heat and cold. Everyone in the Longevity Palace was afraid of the cold. Jiang Wang closed his eyes and rested, not intending to say anything more. The entire journey was silent. The sedan chair moved very quickly. Jiang Wang had only just familiarized himself with the yellow rank Taoist technique, dragon and tiger, when the sedan bearers stopped and got off the sedan chair. "We've arrived at the Longevity Palace," the old man reminded from outside the sedan. Jiang Wang stooped down and got out of the sedan chair. He looked up and saw a plaque hanging above the palace gate with the words Changsheng written on it. These two words were majestic, especially when the word life was written vertically. It gave off a feeling of breaking through the dome of heaven. It was also like a person asking the blue sky. These two words were personally written by His Majesty. Other palaces don't even have them. The old man explained from the side. There was a faint sense of pride in his tone. Jiang Wang looked at the two words again. He felt the majesty of the words and the expectations of a father for his child. "May my son live forever." The architectural style of the entire longevity palace was grand and imposing. Even at this moment when the sky was turning dark, it still gave off a feeling of brightness. Jiang Wang didn't say much. He just followed behind the old man and walked into the longevity palace. Along the way, the palace maid smiled sweetly. The patrolling palace guards held their heads high. The view was wide and the flowers and stones were clean. The atmosphere in the palace was very cheerful. There was a saying, if you don't sweep a house, how can you sweep the world? Another saying was, governing a country is like governing a family. The temperament of a person in power could be reflected to a large extent in his family. Of course, history told people that before sitting on the dragon throne, everything might not be true. After walking through the third palace gate, before a side hall, the first thing that entered his ears was a violent cough. The coughing was short and urgent, violent and tight, as if he was about to stop breathing. Listening to this sound, one would be worried that he would cough out his heart, liver, spleen, and lungs. The old man walking in front of him moved his feet and disappeared. Jiang Wang thought for a moment, then slowly walked into the side hall. It's fine. This was the first thing he heard before stepping into the side hall. After stepping into the side hall, the first thing he saw was Jiang Wuqi. At that moment, Jiang Wuqi was sitting in front of a desk, wrapped in a thick white fox fur coat. He was probably comforting the old man, standing behind him. At that moment, he turned his head and met Jiang Wang's gaze. His face was pale and bloodless. "I've made a fool of myself in front of Qin Yangzi," he said with a smile. His expression was calm, as if he didn't care about his illness, and there was nothing to hide. The old man behind him, dressed in black official robes, was expressionless. He didn't want to show his worry. "Greetings, 11th Prince." Jiang Wang cupped his hands and bowed. They didn't discuss Jiang Wuqi's illness. Jiang Wuqi didn't need to be comforted. Jiang Wuqi coughed twice, then said, "I just heard that Qin Yangzi is coming to the palace today, so I sent someone to invite him. I didn't think I could invite an honored guest." He smiled calmly, "But I'll try." Jiang Wang said modestly, "How can Jiang Wang be considered an honored guest? You are a hero of the Qi, and you have shown the might of the Qi. Of course, you are an honored guest, honored beyond words." As Jiang Wuqi spoke, he stood up and closed a book in front of the desk. He put it in the upper right corner, where there was already a pile of books. Meeting Jiang Wang's gaze, he explained, "I've been free these days, so I've been reading some leisure books about heroes with lofty ideals, evil spirits, and so on." "Oh, leisure books," Jiang Wang said casually. Jiang Wuqi seemed to be interested. "Why? Qin Yangzi also likes to read leisure books." Jiang Wang said truthfully, "I don't really read much." Jiang Wuqi seemed to be particularly interested in this topic. "Why don't you tell me what you've read?" Jiang Wang could only say perfunctorily, "Legends of 1,000 Geniuses of Nations?" After saying the title of the book, he became more confident. After all, it was a leisure book that even Chongxian and Fenghua liked to read, so it couldn't be bad. So he emphasized it affirmatively, "Yes. Legends of 1,000 Geniuses of Nations. It's quite interesting." "Oh, I see." Jiang Wuqi smiled. "This book is not easy to find." "Ah, yes." Jiang Wang felt that if he continued to talk, he would be exposed. And for some reason, the old man was looking at him with a strange gaze. So he quickly changed the topic. "May I know why your highness has invited me here today?" "Actually, it's nothing too important." Jiang Wuqi, wrapped in the white fox fur coat, was like a weak jade sculpture, as if he would shatter with a light tap. He used his thin and long fingers to press down on the book, then walked out from behind the desk. "What royal sister did for you in the coastal waters, I admit that I couldn't have done at that time. So I've given up on recruiting you. Qin Yangzi, you don't have to feel embarrassed." After Zhang Yang's weeping temple, Jiang Wuqi's reputation plummeted. Countless people in the imperial court looked at him coldly. But at this moment, he was walking slowly, still extremely noble. At first glance, he looked thin and weak, but there was a sense of grandeur, like he was patrolling the mountains and rivers. Cough, cough. He lightly clenched his fist, blocking his mouth, and coughed violently twice. The white fox fur coat on his body trembled like snowflakes. He stopped coughing, then looked up at Jiang Wang and said very seriously, "Qin Yangzi, I want to see who is the number one in the imperial court. I wonder if you can satisfy me." Chapter 1199. By the time he left the Longevity Palace, the moon was already hanging in the sky. Jiang Wuqi ordered someone to prepare a sedan chair to send him home, but he declined. It was fine when he came, but it was hard to avoid suspicion if he sat in the Longevity Palace's sedan chair. However, Eunuch Gao, who served Jiang Wuqi, still escorted him to the palace gates. "Qin Yangzi, what's wrong?" "Nothing," Eunuch Gao said politely. "Take care." Jiang Wang didn't say anything else. He cupped his hands and left. Before the sparring, Jiang Wuqi had said that the sparring was only to prove each other's abilities. The outcome of the battle was not to be spread. Therefore, other than him and Jiang Wuqi, only Eunuch Gao, who stood guard outside the palace, knew the outcome of the sparring. Jiang Wuqi was indeed extraordinary. After leaving the Longevity Palace, Jiang Wang reviewed the battle as he walked home alone. Yes, he could be considered to have a home in Linzi. It would be great if an could come and stay for a long time. On such a night, not many people recognized Jiang Qingyang on the streets, even though he was famous throughout Linzi. As he walked in the wide streets of Yaoguang Square, Jiang Wang suddenly heard a voice. "No matter, let him go first." The voice was still far away, but he heard it clearly because of his excellent hearing. Interestingly, it was Xie Baoshu's voice. He had said that it wouldn't be easy to bump into him, but he didn't expect to bump into him so soon. It seemed that there was still some fate. Jiang Wang walked forward for a while. After turning the corner, he saw a large palanquin parked in the middle of a narrow alley. Not far in front of the palanquin, a trembling old man was walking slowly with a cane in his hand. This alley was a shortcut to Xingyang Street. It seemed that the Xie Estate's sedan chair had taken a shortcut and was stuck here. Looking at the scene in front of him, it seemed that the Xie Estate's servants wanted to drive the old man away, but were stopped by Xie Baoshu in the sedan chair. He couldn't tell that the usually annoying Xie Baoshu had this side to him. He didn't always deserve a beating. Jiang Wang shook his head and smiled. The word human was more complicated than anything else in the world. The more people he met and the more he saw human nature, the more he felt that the human sword style was far from being inclusive enough. The Jiang Mansion, which was bestowed by the emperor, also had to pass through Xingyang Street. Jiang Wang walked past the sedan chair in a relaxed manner. Although the alley was small, it was not large enough to block pedestrians. However, as soon as he walked over, the window of the sedan was pulled down heavily. A voice that was neither light nor heavy rang out from within the sedan chair. A vile character intoxicated by success. Jiang Wang immediately gritted his teeth. Sure enough, it was still a misunderstanding. This was the real Xie Baoshu. He turned around on the spot, holding his sword at his waist, and stood in front of the Xie Mansion's sedan chair. He shouted, "Get out here!" The sedan bearers of the Xie family recognized Jiang Wang, and they all looked nervous. However, Xie Baoshu suddenly lifted the sedan chair's curtain and stretched half his body out. He angrily glared at Jiang Wang. "What do you want?" He would never forget that after the great master's ceremony, Jiang Wang and Cheng Gung Sheng, these two rascals, specially ran to the Imperial Academy of Medicine to mock him. He was so angry that he almost couldn't catch his breath. If it weren't for his injuries, he would have fought these two to the death. Now, this Jiang Wang actually lived in Yaoguang Square after returning from the Yellow River Gathering and became his neighbor. He had long been disgusted. It was only because his uncle was strict that he didn't cause any trouble. However, when he returned to the mansion today, he was blocked in the alley for half a day. This Jiang guy actually swaggered past him. If this wasn't mockery, then what was? Of course, Xie Baoshu couldn't stand it. So what if the inner mansion was the best in the world? Wasn't that still the inner mansion? Xie Baoshu's outer mansion wasn't just an empty shell. It would be good if they fought. Then the world would know why there was an outer mansion after the inner mansion. At this moment, in the alley, for sedan bearers stood silently. The large sedan was suspended in the air. The good-looking Xie Bao Shu pressed the curtain to the side of the sedan door with one hand. He leaned half his body out and looked down at Jiang Wang fiercely. On the other hand, Jiang Wang stood tall and stared at him with his hand on his sword. Behind him, an old man who seemed to be a little hard of hearing was slowly walking forward. A full moon hung in the sky, and the ground was covered in white snow. What a scene of confrontation in an alley. Jiang Wang grinned. So obedient. He turned around and swaggered away. He trampled the atmosphere into pieces. Xie Bao Shu stood there, so angry that the veins on his forehead were throbbing. What was this? Were you a 3-year-old kid? He wanted to curse a few times, but he didn't have much experience. He could only curse fiercely. Let's see how long your luck lasts. Speaking of luck, Jiang Wang, who had already walked away, slowly turned back. He looked at Xie Bao Shu with a smile and clicked his tongue. You're still the lucky one. Otherwise, if you went to the viewing river platform with your strength. He looked Xie Bao Shu up and down, shook his head regretfully, and walked away. He didn't say anything else, but there was no need to say anything. As the saying goes, hit people's faces when you hit them, and expose their shortcomings when you scold them. During the master's ceremony, it was 3 against 1, and he was knocked unconscious by Yung Genzuan. This was a humiliation that Xie Bao Shu was ashamed to mention. At this moment, he was so angry that he couldn't speak for a long time. At the end of the alley, there was a fork in the road. To the left was Zhengyang Street. To the right was Yaowang Lane. Jiang Wang walked briskly to the left. With his current status as a third-rank official, he had the right to make the first move. If he didn't make the first move, even if Xie Bao Shu had 10 guts, he wouldn't dare to attack him on the street. Of course, he wouldn't fight with Xie Bao Shu on the street. There was nothing to gain if he won, and he would suffer if he lost. It was very pleasant to bully him like this. In the future, he would be staying in Yaowang Lane for a long time. It seemed that he could consider it as a long-term leisure activity. In a place where Jiang Wang and Xie Bao Shu couldn't see, the old man walking slowly with a cane had already walked right out of Yaowang Lane. His cane was gone, and his hunched back was straightened. A cold light jumped between his fingers a few times and finally disappeared. Then, he covered himself with a cloak and disappeared into the night. Xie Bao Shu was really lucky. Unfortunately, he didn't know. When Jiang Wang returned to the mansion, the butler came up to him. Lord Zhu, there's an invitation for you. The servants in the mansion were all arranged by Cheng Gongsheng. Among the few butler candidates recommended by Cheng Gongsheng, Jiang Wang chose the most low-key and honest one. His surname was Xie, and his name was Ping. He had a wife and no children, and his background was clean and clean. Who sent it? Jiang Wang asked casually as he walked in. It was from the Crown Prince's mansion, the butler said. Today was really strange. He had just met the 11th prince, and the Crown Prince came looking for him. Did the Crown Prince also want to see if his number 1 inner mansion could beat the outer mansion? Jiang Wang took the invitation and glanced at the time. It was to invite him to the palace tomorrow morning. He handed it back and said, "Keep it. I'll go tomorrow." Yes. The butler put away the invitation. He had to go to Changle Palace later to send a reply and tell them that Qing Yangzi had agreed to visit. Jiang Wang asked again, "Is young Master Chong Xian in the mansion?" After he moved to a new mansion, Cheng Gongsheng also begged to come and occupy a yard. He said that his mansion was too remote and he didn't want to live in Marquis Boang's mansion. The butler said, "He went out at noon and hasn't come back yet." Okay, I see. He didn't have to worry about Cheng Gongsheng. No matter who suffered losses, that fatty wouldn't suffer losses. He nodded and walked in. After the ceremony, Jiang Wang clearly felt that his influence in the whole Qi was rising rapidly. Many people and many things needed a certain amount of time to react. And the feedback to Jiang Wang was like waves coming one after another. He was really in the teeth of the storm. Why did the Crown Prince, who he had never met privately before, send an invitation to meet him? Chapter 1200. Ever since the river viewing platform met Tianjiao, Jiang Wang did not use the sword discourse arena as often. That was because the meaning of actual combat was much smaller. It was not that there were no worthy opponents in the inner mansion in the great illusionary realm. Instead, many people hid their strength in the great illusionary realm, including Jiang Wang himself. Even the top 10 could not compare to the standard of a Yellow River gathering. Only swordsman Ning and a few others were worth fighting with. Not long ago, he was still tortured in the sword discourse arena and suffered all kinds of blows. Now that he had drawn his sword and looked around, he could actually say that no one in the same realm was worthy of fighting. To Jiang Wang's journey in the great illusionary realm, it was considered a milestone. He sparred less in the sword discourse arena, so he naturally worked more in other aspects. Dao techniques, sword techniques, the treatment of the heaven and earth isolated island, the exploration of the fourth inner mansion. He would definitely encounter experts in the Blessed Land Challenge, but the next challenge would have to wait until the 15th of August. On the 15th of July, he was still on his way back to Qi, so he did not participate in the Blessed Land Challenge. Now, it had fallen to Green Vine Mountain, which was ranked 46th. As for the 360 points of merit points per month, the wealthy Jiang Wang did not care much about it. He spent another night cultivating. After the morning class, the sky was already bright. Housekeeper Xie Ping knocked on the door softly, reminding him that it was time to set off for Changle Palace. Jiang Wang silently calmed the Dao essence wandering in Tongtian Palace and retrieved the spirit-hiding snake that was shuttling in the fourth inner mansion. Then, he stood up and pushed the door open. To be listed as a candidate by Cheng Gengsheng, Xie Ping was naturally more than enough to manage a Viscount residence. Especially since Lord Jiang was all alone, he did not have any messy relationships to take care of it all. When Jiang Wang walked out, the sedan was already prepared. The Crown Prince had formally invited him and even sent an invitation. Naturally, Jiang Wang could not swagger through the door. Now that he was a rank 3 official, he still had to talk about etiquette. Of course, in terms of etiquette, he should not go to the Crown Prince's door empty-handed this time. He should prepare a gift. If he went to Changle Palace, he would not be able to take out ordinary things. He would have to spend some Dao Yuan stones. In this segment, a real man would naturally not bother about trifles. Thinking of the Crown Prince's benevolence and generosity, he wouldn't care about these customs. The palanquin landed in front of Changle Palace. Xie Ping took Jiang Wang's name tablet and knocked on the door. That's right. Now that he had established his own residence, there was no lack of interpersonal relationships. Thus, Jiang Wang also had his own inscription. It was a thin card with 4 rows of small words on the left. They read, "To Qi, Qingyang Town, 3rd grade Golden Melon Warrior, 4th grade Blue Metal Arrestor, World's #1 Inner Mansion." Finally, there were 2 large characters in the middle, Jiang Wang. No matter where this assassin went, he would have some face. Since the Crown Prince had taken the initiative to invite them, the people of Changle Palace naturally wouldn't tarry. They even hurried to the front of the sedan chair to welcome them. Jiang Wang got down from the sedan chair in style and walked in empty-handed. Wu Fu, the eunuch who was in charge of Changle Palace, welcomed and sent Jiang Wang to Changle Palace. After eagerly welcoming Jiang Wang, he led Jiang Wang into Changle Palace. He could not help but look back. He only saw Xie Ping with a smile on his face and 2 temporary sedan bearers. Only then did he confirm that Qin Yangzi had really come empty-handed. He was too stingy. When he went to Qin Yangzi's mansion to deliver the invitation, he even gave him a jade brush holder. However, he did not say anything on the surface. He led Jiang Wang straight to the dining hall. What do you mean by meeting in the dining hall? Could it be that the Crown Prince wants to tell me the principle of governing a country is like cooking a small fish? I don't care how you govern a country. It's hard to say whether you can govern it or not. Just as Jiang Wang was feeling puzzled, Jiang Wuhua happened to come out from the inner room. He wiped his hands with a white handkerchief as he walked out. He looked at Jiang Wang with a smile. I told you Qin Yangzi should be here by now. He was very friendly and natural. He casually handed the handkerchief to the young eunuch beside him and gestured with his hand. Please take a seat. The porridge is almost ready. Porridge? Did he specially invite me to Changle Palace to eat porridge? Jiang Wang sat down in front of the dining table in confusion. He said politely, "Your Highness, you're too kind." Jiang Wuhua sat cross-legged in front of the dining table opposite him. He said casually, "It's not easy for the people to have an appetite when they wake up in the morning. Porridge is just right for them. It's good for the stomach and comfortable." Jiang Wang did not know what he meant by this. He also started as an ordinary young man and walked step by step to become extraordinary. Of course, he was not unfamiliar with the lives of the people. He only said, "That's true. I used to eat porridge in the morning." Wu Fu, the chief eunuch of Changle Palace, said considerately, "His Highness the Crown Prince personally made this porridge for you." "Oh." Jiang Wang smiled confidently. "Then I'll have to give it a try." Compared to his younger siblings, Jiang Wuhua's appearance was not outstanding. However, he was honest and kind. He was not aggressive. Therefore, he was not distant and easy to get close to. He smiled and asked, "Are Qin Yangzi good at cooking?" Jiang Wang said modestly, "I don't really like it, but I know a thing or two." Jiang Wuhua smiled even more naturally. "What are you good at?" Jiang Wang said confidently and calmly, "Steaming, boiling, and roasting. I know a little about them." Jiang Wuhua wanted to let Jiang Wang try his cooking right away. However, since it was the first time he invited him, it would be disrespectful to let him cook. Therefore, he could only restrain himself for the time being. He laughed loudly and said, "Food is the most important thing to the people. Qin Yangzi is a talented person, but he can still put his passion into cooking. He can hold up the sky and swallow fire. He is a person who shares the same path as me." Jiang Wang immediately changed the topic. "What kind of porridge is your Highness making?" Jiang Wuhua's smile did not change. He only looked to the side. Two young eunuchs walked out, each holding a wooden tray. On the tray, there was a green jade bowl, a pair of ivory chopsticks, and a white jade spoon. The aroma of the food rose in spirals. Jiang Wuhua asked first, "Has it been sent to the Crown Princess?" "It has been sent over first," the young eunuch replied. Jiang Wuhua then turned his head and said to Jiang Wang with a smile, "This drifting snow porridge with stars at night is a top-grade porridge. It is very nourishing. Qin Yangzi, you must try 2 more bowls." Jiang Wang often helped and to taste food, so he had some experience in tasting food. Especially when he heard the name, it was very stylish. It made his index finger twitch. When a young eunuch squatted down and put the tray on the table, he took a closer look and suddenly felt cheated. "Isn't this porridge with century egg and lean meat?" "The porridge is drifting snow, the century egg is drifting snow, and the minced meat is stars." "Ha! Is this the Crown Princess is good at cooking? I could do it too." Jiang Wuhua seemed to have heard his inner thoughts and said with a smile, "Why don't you try it?" Jiang Wang, of course, would not say what he was thinking. He said politely, "It looks delicious." Jiang Wuhua's smile suddenly stiffened. He knew very well what this porridge looked like. Why did Qin Yangzi's politeness sound like mockery? On the other side, Jiang Wang had already taken the white jade spoon. As if afraid that he would choke to death, he gently scooped a little and put it into his mouth hesitantly. Jiang Wuhua was very good at maintaining his composure, but the corner of his mouth just twitched. He asked with a smile, "How is it?" Jiang Wang did not respond immediately. The moment that little bit of porridge entered his mouth, it seemed to turn into a line of ice, falling from his throat to his stomach. It was cool and refreshing all the way. When it fell to the end, it burned into a line of fire, rising from his stomach. The warm feeling rolled all the way to his throat and actually went straight to his head. In an instant, in his mind, snow fell from the sky, fragments of the night, and specks of stars were like a dream. So this was the origin of the name, Drifting Snow Porridge with Stars at Night. Qidian has a poll for the best author of the year 2020. The top 100 authors of the Yuan Writers Index can participate. We are 56th, so we are among them. Users of Qidian Reading and QQ Reading apps can participate in the poll. They can vote once a day. We don't have any chance of getting first place, but we can still vote. At least we have a sense of participation, right? Chapter 1201. Jiang Wang savored the taste for a long time before saying, "Wonderful beyond words." Jiang Wuhua intended to shorten the distance between the two through their mutual interest in cooking. He smiled and said, "This century egg is made from snow bamboo chicken's egg. The meat is pearl swine, and the rice is small magnolia. Out of thousands of ingredients, I have chosen these three ingredients that are the most compatible with each other. It needs to be boiled in an agar-wood pot and serve in a green jade bowl to retain its original taste. Jiao Lansong is used to cook it. It's best to simmer it slowly for 6 hours, not a moment more or less." There was a hint of pride in his smile. It seemed that he was quite confident in his culinary skills. Jiang Wang was indeed overwhelmed by the taste of this bowl of porridge. But when he heard this, his first thought was, does the crown prince have so much free time? It was a small bowl of porridge, but from the ingredients to the pot, to the heat, and even the firewood, it took time and effort. Then where would the crown prince find the time to cultivate? Where would he find the time to govern and study? It was said that governing a country is like cooking a small fish, but it didn't mean that a chef could govern a country. But it wasn't up to him to decide what the crown prince did. On the surface, he said, "Your Highness is a thoughtful person, but this porridge was stolen by me." "That's easy. Snow bamboo chicken, pearl swine, and small magnolia are all unique to the Eastern Palace. Qin Yangzi, you can take some when you go back." Jiang Wuhua smiled and raised his hand, saying, "Don't talk while eating. Please eat the porridge first." And so, they began to enjoy breakfast in Changle Palace. Jiang Wang didn't hold back and drank 2 bowls in a row. At the same time, he silently remembered Jiang Wuhua's method, thinking that he would make a bowl for an inn when he had time. Seeing that Jiang Wang didn't have any intention of adding another bowl, the crown prince put down the green jade bowl and wiped his mouth with a handkerchief. The attendant eunuchs silently removed the food tray, and someone offered fragrant tea. The crown prince smiled and said, "I know that Jiang Qingyang likes to go to brothels." Jiang Wang almost spat out the tea in his mouth. The crown prince continued, "Tasting fragrant tea. My smoky tea doesn't lose to the 8-tone tea." He took such a long breath while speaking. Did he do it on purpose? But it had to be said that the crown prince's mischievousness made him seem more approachable. Good tea, good tea." Jiang Wang awkwardly agreed. In reality, he didn't taste the smoky tea. The crown prince's smile. "Qing, here comes the main topic." But apart from that, he had also seen Jia City's city lord seal, so he understood a bit about the relationship between the people's hearts and the city lord seal. However, he didn't know much about other things. And the crown prince wasn't surprised. He said slowly, "The official path blended with Confucianism and Taoism to establish the army and draw the ink. Hundreds of schools of thought mixed together, and so did the national system. There were pioneering works in ancient times, but it only truly flourished and became popular after the new era of Taoism." Jiang Wang was still very interested in these old stories that had been drowned in time, so he listened attentively. Let's not talk about this history. Perhaps it was because the crown prince saw Jiang Wang's interested expression and wanted to tease him, but the crown prince immediately changed the topic and looked at him meaningfully. "Right now, you only have empty titles. It seems that you don't have a deep understanding of the official road." A third-grade Golden Gourd martial artist was, of course, extremely weak. A 4th-rank blue medal constable was actually a real job. But Lord Jiang had some background in the capital city's patrol manor. The patrol manor almost never arranged anything for him. Jiang Wang himself had a headache when it came to investigating and arresting criminals. Thus, he rarely performed his duties. When all was said and done, he entered the blue medal system in name only. He didn't treat the blue medal as his career. So the crown prince wasn't wrong when he said that he only had fake titles. But because the other party was the country's heir apparent, Jiang Wang couldn't help but feel a bit embarrassed about being caught in the act. Especially since he received his salary as usual. It had never been short. I was focused on fighting for first place and was busy cultivating. He hurriedly explained, expressing that he was also fighting for the country's honor. Then he laughed awkwardly. It really wasn't that deep. The Crown Prince's smile was very warm. In fact, before the outer tower, the official path really wasn't very beneficial to cultivation. Especially since Qin Yangzi was so Tianjiao. He didn't need the official path to help him. Jiang Wang understood. It's different after the outer tower. When exploring the stars and erecting the star tower, the most fearful thing is to get lost. The spirit roams the heavens without a return date. This is actually similar to the soaring dragon entering the inner palace. The soaring dragon realm needs to clear the fog of obscurity to find the inner palace. When the spirit roams the heavens, it also needs to understand the obscurity of the heavens and earth. Only then can it seek the Tao. Jiang Wuhua spoke frankly and with assurance, explaining the matters of cultivation very clearly. Erecting a tower outside the heavens is like probing a needle in the sea, difficult to find and difficult to return. A cultivator's thought is a line between the heavens and earth. The official path can be linked by human aura. What is linked by one person's thought is naturally different from the thought of thousands of people. The official path is used to help cultivators anchor the present world. Of course, you're the world's #1 inner palace. The light of your supernatural power illuminates the 5 palaces internally and the stars outside, so it's not easy to get lost. No one had ever told Jiang Wang these things. At this moment, he really felt like he had a sudden realization. In ancient times, one couldn't go to the outer tower without supernatural power. Presumably, this step of understanding the obscurity of the heavens and earth was extremely difficult. First, there were sages who explored the 4 spirits galaxy and passed down their Tao to help the latecomers to erect the tower. Later, a national system was established. With the help of the official path, it helped people escape the calamity of losing their spirit outside the heavens. There were more and more cultivators outside the tower, and the human race became stronger and stronger. It can be said that the official path was first created to help those who were not talented enough to cultivate. Jiang Wuhua laughed self-deprecatingly. It was as if he was saying that he was one of those people who were not talented enough. The Crown Prince in front of him was one of those people who had no supernatural power but were outside the tower. But Jiang Wang didn't dare to look down on him. Many people said that the Crown Prince only had an advantage because of his age. But today, the Emperor of Qi was a mighty ruler. How could he sit in the East Palace just because he was older? Then his competitors wouldn't be the 9th prince and the 11th prince. After the 3rd princess, there would be the 4th and 5th princes. But in fact, those two, like Jiang Wang, who hadn't been in Qi for long, didn't even know their names or whether they were princes or princesses. As a member of the royal family, they were unknown and even dimmer than the 14th prince, Jiang Wuyo. Moreover, Jiang Wang had met Jiang Wuyo, Jiang Wuxia, and Jiang Wuqi before. They were all dragons and phoenixes among men, all of them dazzling. Jiang Wuhua was able to sit in the East Palace under their attacks. How could he be weak? Judging from the current situation, the Crown Prince's strength was definitely not simple to be able to talk about cultivation so thoroughly. The road to cultivation is long, and the outer tower is just one step, Jiang Wang said seriously. Who knows who is better until you reach the highest point? Jiang Wuhua was stunned for a moment, then laughed. Who knows who is better until you reach the highest point? Jiang Xingyang is the one who knows me best. Jiang Wang was speechless. The Crown Prince was good at everything, but there was one thing about him. He always pulled you to his side with just a few words. One moment, he was a fellow cultivator, and the next moment he was a confidant. Just by looking at this scene, who would know that this was the first time Jiang Wang had visited him? I'm just explaining my personal cultivation philosophy. What I know about you. Your Highness. Jiang Wang just chuckled and didn't say anything. Jiang Wuhua didn't seem to be embarrassed. He put his hands on his knees and leaned his upper body slightly forward. Do you know, he asked, the Holy Son of Heaven's cultivation is extremely high, and he has extraordinary longevity. Why does he still need a crown prince? Chapter 1202. The change in topic was too sudden, and Jiang Wang couldn't react in time. He thought that no matter how strong a person was, it was inevitable that there would be accidents, but of course he didn't dare to say this out loud. He didn't want to leave Changle Palace lying down. He said, Jiang Wang is slow-witted. I really don't know. Jiang Wuhua sat up straight and said, let's go back to the official road. Jiang Wang was speechless. He realized that although the crown prince of the Eastern Palace was known for his magnanimity, he was actually a bit mischievous. Jiang Wuhua continued, the official road is a two-sided affair. If you're competent, your popularity will increase. If you're negligent, your popularity will decrease. Take the outer tower as an example. If the government is harmonious, it can help you anchor the modern world. If the people have no way to make a living, popularity will drag you down, and karma will entangle you, making you even more lost. In other words, if one did a good job as an official, the official road would be beneficial to cultivation. If one did a bad job as an official, the official road would instead drag down cultivators. Jiang Wang wasn't stupid enough to take the initiative to ask about the crown prince. He muttered, if that's the case, shouldn't the officials in the world not have asterisk, 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 asterisk? Jiang Wuhua laughed. This involves talent again. The scope of talent is very wide. Some people have talent for cultivation, but don't have talent for being an official. Some people are capable officials, but are clumsy on the path of cultivation. It's not something you can do just because you want to be an official. The confident smile in his words seemed to be saying, my talent for cultivation may not be that great, but my talent for being a crown prince is very good. The official road first gathers popularity and second gathers resources. Sometimes popularity and resources go against each other. Jiang Wuhua asked, you've also experienced it in Qingyang town. Can you understand? I can probably understand. This was very easy to understand. For example, when Jiang Wang was in Qingyang town, he could wantonly plunder resources for his own use. This would cause him to lose the popularity of the official road. However, he didn't take anything from the people. Instead, he gave them a lot of subsidies. With fewer resources, he could win the hearts of the people and gain popularity. Those with a bright future will naturally manage it well. A small stream flows long. 100 rivers gather to the sea. For those whose path was difficult, it was normal to drain the pond to catch all the fish. Popularity can help sweep away ignorance, and so can resources when accumulated to a certain extent. Jiang Wuhua said, therefore, there are hardworking cultivators and there are downsides. There are officials who are virtuous and there are officials. Although it was said that draining the pond to catch fish was not advisable, for an official, it was true that draining the pond to catch fish could yield the most resources. The official path was also a kind of cultivation. Every cultivator would definitely want to walk forward at the very beginning. However, due to time constraints or fate constraints, different people would slowly make different choices. Normal Xiuzhe like Gu Heng of the Hu family mines, and official Xiuzhe like Shi Jing, the successor to the city master of Jiacheng. They were all the same kind of people. Xiuzhe of the official path with a bright future had to walk on two legs. They needed more resources and more popularity. When one's future was in danger, one might have to make some ugly choices. Listening to the crown prince's description of the official road and combining it with what he had seen and experienced, he felt as if the clouds had parted to reveal the moon. Jiang Wang has learned. Other than that, Jiang Wuhua continued, popularity is related to people's hearts, but it's not just people's hearts. The importance of the official path lies in merit. Therefore, those who are evil can also become capable officials. Those who are evil can also have merit. When he spoke to hear, he smiled. Actually, how can good and evil be so easily distinguished? Jiang Wang sighed and said, it is true. Jiang Wuhua continued, it can be as small as a town or a city, as large as a county or a country. In the outer tower, merit is reflected in popularity. With enough popularity, one does not have to worry about getting lost. After Shan arrives, merit is reflected in the path. An official is also a preaching path. If a person goes to politics, those who succeed because of the official path will also retreat because of the official path. Therefore, passing down the political platform is like passing down the orthodoxy. Political views are different, and they often become enemies. Even now, Jiang Wang did not know what the Crown Prince wanted to say to him. However, the Crown Prince's theory of the official path was very thorough. The official path was also cultivation. No wonder many powerhouses in the imperial court wanted to find someone to inherit their political career before they went into seclusion. This was actually to protect their own cultivation. It is easier for cultivators of the official path to cultivate. However, the official path has two sides. Cultivators of the official path will also be burdened by the official path. If the political platform is passed down, one can escape and gradually break away from the official path. Cultivation will return to oneself. At that time, even if the government dies, there will be no need to worry. If the political platform was not passed down, it could be said that Tao disappears. Hearing this, Jiang Wang could not help but think that this was probably the difference between a country system and a sect system. If one relied on the official path to cultivate, one's cultivation would be faster. However, pure sect cultivators would also be less bound by the official path. It was hard to say which was better and which was worse, but the situation in the modern world could already be seen. Apart from those top-notch sects, there was really no place in the world that did not become a country. Without a doubt, under a country system, it was easier to give birth to powerhouses. This was the reason why countries rose up together after the Taoist calendar was restarted. The long river of history surged, and many waves splashed. The human race was also constantly evolving, and many changes were happening, from the rise of sects in great numbers to the rise of countries. Later generations could only sigh, so that's how it is. However, if one was born in that time and place, then who knew what kind of earth-shaking changes would occur? This kind of path change, the sweeping of the flood of people's Tao, just thinking about it made one feel that it was grand. Even enlightened masters, the Crown Prince seemed to become more and more interested as he spoke. He suddenly asked, "Do you know the young emperor, Han Yin?" Jiang Wang's heart stirred, and he asked in return, "The retired emperor of Yong? He is an excellent example." Jiang Wuhua clapped his hands and smiled. He relied on the young emperor's position to stabilize his position as an enlightened master and wanted to advance further. However, perhaps due to time constraints or power constraints, he was unable to do so and was unable to advance Yong. Instead, he became a burden to Yong. Although he was forced to pass the throne to Han Su due to pressure, he still grasped his power tightly and was the de facto ruler of Yong. This was because his cultivation as a present-age, enlightened master required continuous absorption of Yong's fate to maintain it. If Yong could continue to prosper, it would be like flowing water not rotting. When he absorbed the fate of the nation, the increase in his cultivation would also nourish the power of the nation. If Yong stopped advancing, then he would become Yong's biggest parasite and would be punished sooner or later. So that was the case. Jiang Wuhua didn't really dare to boast shamelessly about why the emperor appointed crown prince. However, after describing the official path, he used the matter of Han Yin to make it clear. The path of the emperor was also within the nation's system. The present Emperor Qi's cultivation was unparalleled, and he led the Qi to become the overlord of the eastern region. However, it was difficult to advance further on the official path. There were actually only two paths in front of Emperor Qi. The first was to sweep through the 6 directions and unify the world. With this achievement, he was naturally unparalleled and surpassed the peak of the extraordinary. As for the second, he should attempt to break away from the restrictions of the official path. However, just like other cultivators on the official path, the emperor's supreme position needed someone to inherit his achievements. If Qi's power declined after his abdication, Not only would he be unable to leave the official path and return the supreme cultivation to himself, he would also be dragged down by the declining country. Therefore, whether it was in the sense of cultivation, personal feelings, or achievements, the emperor needed someone who could inherit his achievements, or at least keep his position as the overlord of Qi. This was the reason why a crown prince was needed. Shunlin had a lifespan of over 500 years. Zhenren had a lifespan of over 1,000 years. However, there were very few monarchs who held power for 100 years. This was because the monarch was already at the top of the system, and there was no room for improvement. Once the country stagnated, they would need to constantly absorb the fate of the country to stabilize their cultivation, and they would become the parasite of the country. They would either wait to be overthrown or die with the country. Take Han Yin, for example. He was unable to advance on the official path, nor did he have the courage to break away from the state system. He had been in power for over 300 years, but in reality, he was dragging the Yong state down with him, using the fate of the Yong kingdom to continue Han Yin's cultivation as a perfected person. It was no wonder that the Yong kingdom was on the decline. It was no wonder that Zhuang Gaoxian and Du Ruhui dared to start a kingdom war, fighting the strong with the weak. In reality, that expert was only strong on the outside, but weak on the inside. The more Jiang Wang thought about it, the more he felt that there were endless emotions. Many things that he couldn't understand in the past suddenly became clear, as if he had seen a new world. As expected of the official path formed by 100 schools of thought, it was no wonder that it had become the mainstream of the modern world in less than 4,000 years after the Taoist calendar was restarted. This was truly a vast and boundless cultivation world. Chapter 1203. The official path was a mix of hundreds of schools of thought. It was vast and broad, and it was different for each person. The Crown Prince only gave a rough idea. Jiang Wang was only guessing about Son of Heaven Qi's path. However, he suddenly thought of something. If that was the case, it was the best time for him to kill Dong, hitting the Zhuang kingdom where it hurt the most. Otherwise, with his victory over Yong, Du Ruhui could have stepped down and replaced Dong as the successor. Dong A's ability to govern was needless to say. With a stronger Zhuang kingdom as the prime minister, he would have no worries and even had the chance to become a god. Once Du Ruhui escaped, he might have been the real person the next time he saw him. He entered Xianan's city at night to kill Dong A, but he didn't just kill Dong A. He also cut off Du Ruhui's path. He also cut off the positive cycle of Zhuang Kingdom's prime minister. It would take Du Ruhui many years to find the next Dong A who could succeed him. Crown Prince, are you saying that Han Yin's death might not be that simple? Jiang Wang connected the dots with what he saw in Yong and asked seriously, Zhuang Gaoxian didn't kill him alone? The answer to this question was very important to him. From this, he could determine Zhuang Gaoxian's strength. However, Jiang Wuhua only shook his head and smiled. I didn't say anything. His smile was already a kind of answer. Even the faraway Yong in the west was within Qi's sight. Jiang Wang wasn't surprised. If one couldn't look at the world, how could one be called an overlord? If one only looked at one region, one could only be called a hero for a while. Understand, Jiang Wang said. What do you understand? Jiang Wuhua asked with a smile. I understand why the Crown Prince told me about the official path. Jiang Wang didn't smile. He only asked, does the Imperial Court have plans for me? Jiang Wuhua talked about the official path. Qi Ting was probably going to give him an actual position. Inviting him to the residence for porridge was undoubtedly a sign of goodwill. After all, Jiang Wuhua was the Crown Prince of the Eastern Palace. It wasn't difficult for him to know about the Imperial Court's plans in advance. He gave him a heads up and helped him gain knowledge so that he could make a better choice. This favor was a solid one. He smiled and said, Qin Yangzi is both intelligent and brave. He is the fortune of the country. At this moment, he didn't say, it's my fortune. He knew that going too far was as bad as not going far enough. However, Jiang Wang could not accept this praise. Only now did he understand that if it had been Cheng Geng Sheng, The moment the crown prince opened his mouth, he would have known the truth of the matter and would not have accepted this favor. Debts of gratitude were the hardest to repay, and the debt owed to the crown prince was even harder to repay. And now that he heard this, he had to accept this favor, even if he didn't want to. Jiang Wang sighed in his heart, but on the surface he smiled and said, "Thank you, Your Highness, for your guidance." Jiang Wuhua waved his hand. "You and I are kindred spirits, so we should be close friends. There's no need for thanks." With a serious expression, he said, "Meritorious deeds are nothing more than political and martial arts. You have to be clear about what suits you. The official road is long and cannot be blocked for a short period of time. You are a peerless Tianjiao, a talent of the nation. Even the emperor will consider your wishes. His original intention is to let you grow faster, not drag you down. Was it to be a prefectural governor? Or was it to lead an army to conquer the bewildering world or the door of 10,000 demons?" It wasn't that Jiang Wang was arrogant, but with his current position and the talent he had shown, he didn't have many choices. He couldn't possibly be asked to compile classics and do some painstaking work that would waste his time. What Jiang Wang needed to consider more was, should his cultivation be closer to the official road? This was the foundation of the path of Tao, so he needed to consider it carefully. Since he had accepted this favor, Jiang Wang wouldn't dwell on it anymore. He asked, "Jiang Wang, there's something I don't understand. Since the official road has two sides, and the political platform is related to cultivation, apart from hatred, why would anyone betray the nation and be disloyal? There were only two kinds of traitors. One was for revenge, and the other was for profit. Under the cultivation system of the official road, there shouldn't be any profit to be gained from betraying the nation. There are more than one or two nations in the world. Those who are evil in one nation may be meritorious in another nation. Meritorious deeds and evil deeds can offset each other. With the support of the nation system, one can bear the backlash and even benefit from it." Jiang Wang thought to himself, just like Huang Yixing, who sold his yang for money. Not only did his cultivation not decline with the death of his yang, but it also increased. However, this wasn't the question he really wanted to ask. After the crown prince explained, he said, "Moreover, cultivation is one's own. Take the exploration of the Star Dome as an example. How would others know if it consumes human energy? In the officialdom, there are countless people who don't rely on the official road. Therefore, belonging to the system may not be loyal, and leaving the system may not be rebellious." He looked at Jiang Wang meaningfully. Qi is a great country. Loyalty isn't reflected here. He obviously understood the meaning behind Jiang Wang's words and told Jiang Wang the answer. Whether or not to rely on the official road was entirely up to him. Qi Ting wouldn't judge his loyalty based on this. Just like how he was now holding a 4th grade blue medal, he could treat his actual position as an empty one, or he could do the truth and gain merit, but not use the power of the official road. Everything was up to him. It all depended on how he chose his own path. Jiang Wang felt that today, he had a new understanding of the crown prince of the Qi. Of course, he also had a new understanding of the official road in the modern world. He placed his hands on his knees. He said seriously, "Listening to your words is better than reading books for 10 years. The crown prince smiled. The word crown can't be used carelessly. Who said that the crown prince was simple? Jiang Wang only felt that he had climbed out of a pit and fallen into another one. There was no way to resist. Of the 36 stratagems, the best one was to leave. He looked out the hall. It's getting late." Jiang Wang was surprised. Then, he looked at the crown prince regretfully. "Today, I had a good chat with your highness. Jiang Wang benefited a lot. Unfortunately, I still have important matters to attend to. I can't stay for long. I'll take my leave now. May your highness be blessed." Jiang Wuhua wasn't angry. He just sat there and smiled warmly. "Take care, Qin Jiangzi." Jiang Wang hurriedly got up and walked out. He was afraid that the crown prince wouldn't let him go. He felt that he wasn't a match for these nobles when it came to beating around the bush. If he came to Changle Palace in the future, he had to bring Cheng Gongsheng along. Bah! He wouldn't come to Changle Palace in the future. He would think of other ways to repay the favor he owed. Hey, wait! The Crown Prince's voice sounded behind him. Jiang Wang pretended that he didn't hear it. He walked out of the dining hall in a few steps. Suddenly, he felt his sleeves tighten. Someone had grabbed him. Jiang Wang looked back and met Jiang Wuhua's warm smile. "Ah, Your Highness," he said in surprise. "Why did you call me?" It seemed that he really didn't hear the previous call. Jiang Wuhua also didn't seem to see through him. He just let go of his sleeves and reached out with a smile. He took a quaint food box from an attendant eunuch and handed it to Jiang Wang. "You forgot to bring this. There's snow bamboo chicken, pearl swine, and small magnolia inside. Use this food box to store them. They won't spoil no matter how long you put them in." Jiang Wang took it. "Jiang Wang will engrave Your Highness' kindness in my heart." Jiang Wuhua only smiled and said, "Come back for dinner next time." "I'll definitely come back when I have time." Jiang Wang put the food box into his storage box and left in a hurry. He stepped out of the palace gate. It was still morning. The warm light fell on the palace plaque, illuminating the two words Changle. A contented person can be happy forever. Judging from his behavior, the Crown Prince was also a contented person and could be happy forever. But was that really the case? Jiang Wang found his sedan chair and hurriedly got in. He said hurriedly, "Let's go." The sedan bearers obediently lifted the sedan chair and left. On the other hand, the housekeeper Xie Ping was shocked. Did Lord Jiang commit a crime? Chapter 1204. Everyone in the world had their own worries and worries. The sedan bearers only cared about moving forward, earning money for their strength. The housekeeper, Xie Ping, was worried that he would lose his job again. Lord Jiang, who was in the sedan, could finally calm down and re-examine the prince in Changle Palace. He was not boasting, but with his current strength, an ordinary outer sect cultivator would definitely not be able to easily grab his sleeve. Not to mention, he almost could not react in time. What this meant in battle was self-evident. However, the Crown Prince did not have any divine abilities. Too many people knew this, and it was definitely true. Then did he find the outer sect of his Tao path? Even if it was the same divine ability, different people would develop different strengths and weaknesses. Everyone's Tao path was different, and their progress was different. It was inevitable that there would be differences. For example, the Four Seas Trade Association's guild master, Su Shi, was not as good as Yingguan. Then, how strong was the Crown Prince? Just like Yingguan in the past, Jiang Wang knew very well that giving gifts was one thing, but the Crown Prince was showing his strength to him. It was not that Jiang Wang was qualified to control the situation in Qi's imperial court, but the Crown Prince was already looking at the future and planning for the future. The Qi Empire of today was, of course, powerful and prosperous. It had swallowed the Yang country, suppressed Great Xia, set up the coastal waters, and won the Yellow River. It could be said to be powerful in all directions. However, it was impossible to unify the world. None of the 6 strongest countries in the world was weak. In other words, if the emperor wanted to take a step forward, he should consider transcending. According to the rules of the official road system, the emperor should not be in power for more than 100 years. It was already the 55th year of the Yuanfeng dynasty. In other words, a new emperor would ascend the throne in at most 45 years. 45 years could be considered long, but it could also be considered short in the blink of an eye. A 19-year-old with the best inner palace in the world, his future was immeasurable. The Crown Prince's wisdom was that from the beginning to the end, he did not mention the word recruit at all. This was because Jiang Wang would definitely reject him, even if he did not have a relationship with Jiang Wuyo. A Qin Jiao like Jiang Wang would naturally have a bright future as long as he followed the rules. There was no need to take the risk of getting involved in the battle for the dragon. The Crown Prince was just expressing his goodwill and giving Jiang Wang a favor. He even asked Jiang Wang to accept it. In the future, when he is the ruler of the country, a talent like Jiang Wang should also remember their old friendship and pledge loyalty to the new emperor. To express goodwill was to place a chess piece for the future. By showing his strength, he was telling him that the crown prince was worthy of his loyalty. To Huaying Palace, Jiang Wang said in the sedan chair. The sedan bearers turned around silently. Xie Ping, who was walking beside the sedan, had an even more bitter expression on his face. It seemed that Jiang Juye's crime was quite big this time. He even had to go to the third princess. As for Jiang Wang, he had been invited to the Longevity Palace and Tranquil Palace. Huaying Palace was the only place where he had taken the initiative to visit. The closeness and distance between them was self-evident. He wanted to tell the third princess that there was a promise that he would keep in mind. It was also to prevent others from suspecting him. Tranquil Palace and Huaying Palace were not far apart, so the sedan soon arrived at their destination. Although he did not send an invitation in advance, Jiang Wang would not be rejected by Huaying Palace. The female officer of Huaying Palace led him to the thousand-carp pond and left. It was rare that Jiang Wuyo did not practice martial arts today. Instead, he took a jade bowl and fed the fish by the pond. At this moment, she seemed to be hiding some heroic spirit. Her eyes were a little distant, and no one knew what she was thinking. The sunlight shone on the water. A handful of fish food was sprinkled, and hundreds of golden carps leaped. It was a spectacle. Jiang Wang walked closer and coughed. "Your Highness, you're in a good mood." Jiang Wuyo looked at the golden carps and did not turn back. "Why did you want to visit today?" Jiang Wang said, "Honestly, I've been to both the Longevity Palace and Tranquil Palace. I was afraid that people would misunderstand, so I came to visit your Highness." Jiang Wuyo turned back and glanced at him. "Since you're afraid of misunderstandings, why didn't you come to my Huaying Palace last night?" Jiang Wang said awkwardly. After leaving the Longevity Palace last night, it was already very late. It wasn't convenient. Jiang Wuyo smiled. "You and I are open and above board. Why would it be inconvenient?" Jiang Wang said, "I still have to worry about your Highness' reputation." Jiang Wuyo looked at him calmly for a while and said, "You're also a layman." She turned back and continued to sprinkle the fish bait. "You stayed at the Longevity Palace until midnight. Why didn't you worry about Jiang Wuqi's reputation?" Jiang Wang was speechless. He wanted to say, how could it be the same? But after thinking about it, it seemed that it was hard to say what was different. In the end, he said in a muffled voice, "The 11th prince and I exchanged pointers." Jiang Wuyo did not seem to care about the outcome. He only asked, "Do you know how many golden carps there are in the thousand-carp pond?" Jiang Wang was not deceived by the name of the thousand-carp pond. He carefully counted and said, 167. "You see," Jiang Wuyo said, "you know it's the thousand-carp pond, but you still have to count it. You only believe what you see and not what you hear." "I'm the same." Jiang Wang only smiled. "Then your Highness will just have to wait and see." Jiang Wuyo asked again. "The one in the Eastern Palace, his cooking skills are not bad, right?" Jiang Wang said, "If the Crown Prince opened a restaurant as a chef, I would visit him every day." Of course, the Crown Prince would not open a restaurant, so he would not visit him every day. Jiang Wuyo's jade-like fingers twirled and sprinkled the fish bait bit by bit. The golden carps in the water rose and sank, competing with each other for food. She slowly said, "Counting with my fingers, I haven't tasted his cooking for 20 years. At that time, I was still young. Before that, I always thought that his cooking was the best in the world." "And now?" Jiang Wang asked. Jiang Wuyo did not answer this question. He only said, "He's about to descend." These words were somewhat without rhyme or reason. Jiang Wang did not know how she came to this conclusion. Perhaps it was her own intelligence channel, or perhaps Jiang Wuhua deliberately revealed something. But since she said so, then it could not be wrong. He thought for a moment and said, "My contact with the Eastern Palace is limited, but I also feel that his strength is not as ordinary as the rumors say." Jiang Wuyo did not continue this topic and changed the topic. "Now that you're a third-rank official, it's hard to be idle. Where do you want to go if you want to work? If you go to the bewildering world, Qi Jinren can take care of you." Jiang Wang smiled and asked, "Do I have to fight and kill? Why can't he govern a region?" "Back then, Cheng Gengsheng wanted to give me the position of Rizhao Protector. There were no servants here to serve them. There were only the two of them at the edge of the thousand-car pond. Jiang Wuyo casually placed the jade bowl containing the bait on the stone fence and walked along the edge of the pond. "You're not suitable," she said. Jiang Wang was speechless. "Do you need to rely on the official road for your cultivation?" Jiang Wuyo asked again. "Didn't your highness say that I'm not suitable?" Jiang Wang said in a muffled voice, somewhat indignant. Jiang Wuyo laughed. "Let's go back." She waved her hand casually. "I'm going to cultivate." She did not seem to care about Jiang Wang's visit to the Longevity Palace and Chang'e Palace. She told Jiang Wang not to care either. Jiang Wang stopped in his tracks and watched the tall figure disappear into the distance. She was straightforward, decisive, and not at all sloppy. None of the imperial descendants of the Qi were simple. As Jiang Wang walked back, he glanced at the thousand-car pond. Although the beautiful golden carps had finished eating, they did not immediately hide. Instead, they swam on the surface of the water, as if they were about to form a character. Although the golden carps were expensive, they were just playthings. It was normal for the person who fed them to train them to do things that pleased them. Jiang Wang waited for a while with great interest. The group of golden carps finally settled down and formed the character Ji. They scattered in all directions. Specks of golden light fell to the bottom of the pond. Chapter 1205. August arrived as scheduled. It was a sunny day. Jiang Wang, Cheng Gengsheng, and Shi left the Jiang mansion on horseback. They swaggered through the streets of Linzi like a tyrant. The main reason was that Chongqing Fat size was amazing. The main street of Linzi could usually accommodate 7 horses side by side. When he squeezed his horse, there was not much space left. The 3 of them rode side by side and took up more than half of the street. They looked very foppish, not to mention that they were followed by a group of evil servants with sticks. Is it necessary to do this? Jiang Wang was a little uncomfortable facing the disdainful eyes of the passers-by. "We're going to bully people. How can we not be arrogant?" Cheng Gengsheng didn't care at all. He said, "Shi, keep up. Keep up the formation." He took time to glare at the passers-by. "What are you looking at? Haven't you seen an unreasonable person?" The passers-by were angry but didn't dare to say anything. Shi didn't say anything, but his head was obviously lowered. Although he was wearing heavy armor and an iron helmet, his defense wasn't as amazing as Chongqing Fat's. He could ignore all the disdainful eyes. Today, he said that one of his shopkeepers was bullied when he went to a brothel. The bully was also a young master in Linzi City. Of course, in Cheng Gengsheng's words, a mere 4th-rank hat. How dare he offend me? I'll beat his father as well. Yes, today's life was simple and unpretentious. Cheng Gengsheng and Shi, who were inseparable, dragged Jiang Wang along. They went to to seek justice for their shopkeepers. A grandson of Marquis Baoong, a 3rd-rank official, went to bully a 4th-rank official's son. There was no suspense at all. They went with the intention of crushing him. Jiang Wang knew that Cheng Gengsheng must have an ulterior motive for dragging him along. If it wasn't here, it had to be somewhere else. This fat man often did things in a way that was airtight. He would appear in silence. What had he been busy with during this period of time? Perhaps it was time to find out. However, it was truly shameful to swagger around like this. According to the plot of the movie, justice would soon descend from the heavens, as they were young thug on the streets. The passerby who had been yelled at by Cheng Gengsheng to the point that he was full of grievances suddenly had his eyes lit up. He happened to see a very powerful and reputable, noble young master coming towards them on a horse. How can a righteous person tolerate this group of people acting so arrogantly on the streets? Teach these bastards a good lesson for me. The passers-by shouted in their hearts, silently cheering for him. Little did he know that Cheng Gengsheng's eyes also lit up. "Hey!" He raised his hand and greeted. "Thank you, young master." Xie Baoshu, who was also riding a tall horse, had an unlucky expression on his face. He pretended that he did not hear anything and continued to ride his horse forward, passing by Cheng Gengsheng's group. Have you forgotten me so quickly, young Master Xie? Chung Gung Sheng even turned his head to greet him. When you were knocked unconscious at the Great Master ceremony, I even went to the Imperial Hospital to visit you. Xie Baoshu's heart was racing. His hand that was holding the reins was about to turn blue. He definitely could not win in a verbal battle, but he was not confident in fighting 1 against 3. If he was not careful and got beaten up in the middle of the street, he would not have the face to stay in Lindsay anymore. He could only ride his horse forward expressionlessly. Treat me like a fart, treat me like a fart. He repeated in his heart. It was indeed more comfortable this way. Chung Gung Sheng snorted and turned his head back in dissatisfaction. I was just saying that moving to Yaowang Lane and being neighbors with Xie Xiaobao would be more or less fun. I didn't expect him to be so bad at teasing. How boring. Jiang Wang was stunned. Xie Xiaobao. Chung Gung Sheng pursed his lips. Isn't he a Shu Bao? Every day. It's my uncle who says that he can't even speak without his uncle's help. Xie Xiaobao, hey. Speaking of bullying others, Zhongshuan Sheng was the expert at it. Jiang Wang sighed in his heart. He did not know why. Originally, running on the street and acting like a tyrant, even if it was just an act, made him feel uncomfortable. But when he bullied Xie Baoshu, Chung Gung Sheng grinned at him and raised his eyebrows, meaning, is it cool? Jiang Wang silently straightened his back. It was quite cool. The passers-by who had high hopes for Xie Baoshu shrank their heads and walked forward silently. The farther away from these wretched people, the better. Even the young master of the Imperial Advisor's residence was bullied like this. He was just scolded. What was there to be upset about? He comforted himself like this, but suddenly he saw a group of people flying over. Good. The blue metal has made his move. The passers-by was delighted. The Imperial Advisor's office of the capital city was directly under the Emperor's command. No matter if you were a noble or a young master of a big family, you would be arrested without any mercy. Who asked you to be arrogant? He looked back fiercely. In his heart, this team of blue metal was under his order to arrest the young thug. It made him drunk. However, he saw this team of blue metal quickly flying forward and landing on the ground together. They bowed to the young thug riding on the fiery red horse. Lord Jiang, the commandant has an order to summon you. Damn it. The passers-by cursed in his heart, lowered his head, and hurried away. To be able to bully the young master of the Imperial Advisor's residence, to run amok on the street, and to have a position in the Imperial Advisor's office of the capital city. Even in Lindsay, he was indeed qualified to be arrogant. However, Jiang Wang, who received the order, was also stunned. This team of blue metal arresters was polite and considerate, which meant that the commandant of the Northern Yamen suddenly summoned him not because he had committed a crime. Then, he could only summon him to do something. However, although he was a 4th-rank blue metal arrester, the Imperial Advisor's office of the capital city had never forced him to do any cases. When he first took up the post, it was because of Chung Gung Sheng's favor. Later, it was because of his friendship with Zhang Xiaoming. Why was it so sudden this time, without even a notice beforehand? But no matter what, since the commandant of the Northern Yamen had summoned him, no matter what Chung Gung Sheng's plans today, they could only be temporarily put aside. Do you know what's going on? Jiang Wang asked on the horse. I don't know either, but Commandant, you must go immediately. We just came from your residence, the blue metal arrester replied. Chung Gung Sheng, who was piled on top of the horse, asked, should we follow? Of course, the arrester knew Chung Gung Sheng's identity and looked troubled. The Imperial Advisor's office is very busy right now. Young Master Chongxian is not a blue metal arrester, so I'm afraid it's not suitable. Chung Gung Sheng nodded. It's okay, you don't have to be troubled. He smiled at Jiang Wang and said, plans can't keep up with changes. I can't bully people today. As he spoke, he raised his head and glanced at the sky. Jiang Wang instantly understood. This time, the Emperor summoned him to handle a case. That was why the commandant of the Northern Yamen suddenly gave the order. That was why Zhang Xiaoming couldn't inform him in advance. The Imperial Advisor's office of the capital city didn't lack capable people. A prestigious blue metal arrester. Comparing Jiang Wang's ability to handle cases was an insult to those people. What kind of case could only be handled by Jiang Wang? What nonsense are you talking about? Arrestor Jiang was already in the state of handling a case. He said sternly, I'm a blue metal arrestor, an official of the Imperial Court. How can I bully people with you? He simply got off the horse and handed the reins to Arrestor Jiang. I won't drink tea. I have some work to do. Help me send Yin Zhao back. Yin Zhao, whose red mane was like fire, shrank back. Jiang Wang smiled and patted its head. Don't worry, he won't ride you. Fine, fine. It wasn't the first time Cheng Gengsheng was despised by Yin Zhao. He said faintly, let Shirsi hold it. Shirsi stretched out his hand and took Yin Zhao's reins. Yin Zhao took a few quick steps forward and stuck close to him. Jiang Wang then said to the blue metal arrestor in front of him, let's go. The group rose from the ground and flew to the northern yamen. Chapter 1206. With the blue metal hanging around his waist for so long, Baya could be considered as Jiang Wang's maiden home. Back then, Yulong was delighted to keep talents for the blue metal. Now, he could see the results. He was the world's #1 inner court and also a blue metal holder. This made many young people in Qi yearn for the blue metal. The other yamens did not need to talk about talent reserves in front of Baya. No matter what kind of talent they had to back down in front of the Yellow River leader. If there was a blue metal in the Capital Inspection Office, Qing Yangzi, Jiang Wang, could also be listed on the list, making his name known. In reality, Jiang Wang could clearly feel that the entire blue metal system had accepted him. Because he was only a nominal position and rarely did any actual work, most blue metal holders did not have much of an impression of him. Some of them even had a bad impression of him. They always felt that he got the blue medal through the back door and had a 4th rank belt hanging around his waist. It was unfair to those constables who worked hard to solve cases. After he won the spot to represent Qi in the Yellow River gathering, this impression changed. Overnight, Jiang Wang became the pride of the blue medal holder. Many constables were willing to mention Jiang Wang's name. Do you know Jiang Wang? The world's #1 inner court. We're blue medal holders. Just this sentence alone was enough to make him proud and elated. This team of blue metal constables who were ordered to summon Jiang Wang did not put on airs. They were all very polite. After entering Baya, everyone was smiling and full of kindness. However, this relaxed and happy atmosphere disappeared after entering the charter hall. The charter master, another name for Wanlong. Wanlong, the 7th son of the Dragon Emperor. He loved litigation and was impartial. Legend had it that he was in charge of all the lawsuits of the aquatic clan. Of course, after the dragon clan was chased into the sea, the aquatic clan that remained in the modern world no longer worshipped Wanlong. On the other hand, humans did not have anything to hide. From a name, one could tell how important the charter hall was in Baya. The 3 people sitting in the charter hall undoubtedly showed the importance of today's event. Jiang Wang only recognized 2 of them, the Northern Yamen Commandant, Zheng Shi, who sat in the middle, and the Deputy Patrol Inspector, Yang Weitong, who sat to his right. Just these 2 alone were already very important. Not to mention the elegant man sitting on Zheng Shi's left. From his appearance, he looked like a middle-aged man. He looked even younger than Zheng Shi. He was dressed appropriately and had an elegant demeanor. Although he was sitting to the left of Zheng Shi, but from Zheng Shi and Yang Weidong's attitude, this person's status was slightly above Zheng Shi's. The position of Northern Yamen Commandant was a lowly and powerful position. In terms of rank, it was not as high as Jiang Wang's 3rd-grade Golden Melon Warrior. However, in terms of power, there were not many people in the entire Linzi who were above Zheng Shi. The 3 of them were seated facing the door of the hall. Behind them was a tiger-like statue of Bayan. From the looks of it, there was a bit of a tripartite trial. It made people nervous for no reason. Constable Jiang. As soon as Jiang Wang entered, Zheng Shi opened his mouth and said, Dr. Xie, Patrol Inspector Yang, and I have been waiting for you for a long time. This was to remind Jiang Wang of the identity of the elegant man. His status was above Zheng Shi, and his surname was Xie. The imperial court speaker, Xie Huaiyan. Jiang Wang felt a little guilty for bullying the other party's nephew just now. "Greetings, sirs." He cupped his hands and said, "Jiang Wang has come late. Please forgive me." Xie Huaiyan did not speak. Although Yang Weitong sat with the two of them, he did not have much right to speak. Of the two beside him, one was his direct superior. The other was of the same rank as his teacher. He sat here to supervise the fairness of the entire case. In fact, he was not on the same level as anyone. Zhang Shi waved his hand. "You did not know beforehand that you would be summoned." He casually brushed this matter aside and went straight to the point, asking, "When you returned to Qi last month, do you remember what happened in Yangland?" Jiang Wang was stunned. Yangland? Nothing happened there. While he was stunned, his mind had already spun quickly. When a returning team passed through Yangland, which was Hingyang County, there was some unhappiness. Chao Jie reprimanded Huang Yixing and let it go lightly. With Chao Jie's status, this was a small matter. He did not pass through Chiwei County. In Rizhao County, he only said a few words to Tian Antai, who was waiting by the roadside. Other than that, what else could it be? Zhang Shi said, "Think about it carefully." Jiang Wang was confused. "I don't understand what you are asking." Xie Huaiyan looked at him quietly, still not expressing his opinion. Yang Weitong was expressionless, without any emotion. "I might as well say it directly," Zhang Shi said. "What happened between Chao Jie and Huang Yixing that day? You were at the scene. Do you remember?" "Of course I remember." Jiang Wang then recounted the events of that day in full. How Huang Yixing organized the welcoming party, how Chao Jie reprimanded. He was impartial, without any personal opinions. He even retold the entire conversation, without adding or subtracting a single word. There were many people present that day. He saw and heard more than anyone else, so there was no need to hide anything. Moreover, he did not feel that there was anything wrong with Chao Jie. But for the Northern Yamen Commandant to ask like this, did something happen between Chao Jie and Huang Yixing? Had he guessed wrongly? Was he summoned to the Northern Yamen today, not for a mission, but as a witness for a case? As Jiang Wang recounted, he could not help but guess. Xie Huaiyan spoke at this time. "Are you sure that General Chao said, 'You old young bureaucrats need to change your habits'?" Jiang Wang thought for a moment, then said, "He did say that, but at the time," Xie Huaiyan raised his hand to stop him, then said, "Huang Yixing is dead." When he said this, he looked straight into Jiang Wang's eyes. His appearance was elegant and his temperament was gentle, but when he stared at Jiang Wang, he was so cold that he could not look straight at him. Jiang Wang looked straight at him and said in shock, "How can that be?" No matter what, Huang Yixing was the town protector of Deqi. His status was similar to that of a county chief. It was not a small matter for such a person to die. Xie Huaiyan said slowly. Someone saw Huang Yixing with his hair draped over his face and his Dao energy dissipated. He felt his death in front of the city gate. This way of dying was too strange. Dissipating his Dao energy. Did that mean he committed suicide? But how could someone like Huang Yixing commit suicide? Jiang Wang immediately realized that if he could think of something, how could the important people in the imperial court not think of it? He felt his throat dry up, and he could not help but ask. "Then General Chao is now," Xie Huaiyan said. "He's been grounded in the residence." Chao Jie was suspected of being related to Huang Yixing's death. No wonder the Northern Yamen Commandant personally supervised the investigation, and no wonder a court official was present. The death of a county chief involved Chao Jie, the commander of the Spring Death Army. This was a matter of great importance. There were not many people in Qi who were qualified to participate in this investigation. Of course, it was not convenient for the military hall to appear, so someone from the political affairs hall came. Chapter 1207. He was the commander of the 9 soldiers and a member of the military hall. Of course, he wouldn't be thrown into jail just because of a little trouble. However, for such a big shot to be confined in the mansion, he was already a prisoner. Jiang Wang quickly realized the severity of the problem. Huang Yixing's identity was sensitive. How could he be the governor of Hingyang County? There was no other reason. He was one of the flags of the old sun returning to Qi. He was the best example of Xianying people are also Qi people. Chao Jie scolded Huang Yixing out of anger. He also wanted to teach him a lesson. He couldn't bear to see Huang Yixing bring the old bureaucratic habits of Xianying to Qi. This wasn't a problem. However, Huang Yixing's sudden death became a big problem. Jiang Wang could totally imagine it. There would definitely be rumors that Chao Jie forced Huang Yixing to death. To think that he, Huang Yixing, as a Qi citizen, was eagerly welcoming the returning heroes who had seized the first place. Although he was flattering them a bit, but he had the heart of patriotism. How could he be guilty? Chao Jie kept saying that he was an old Xianying bureaucrat. Did he not recognize Xianying people as officials of Qi? Qi now ruled the eastern region. How many countries had it swallowed? How many people had returned to Qi from other countries? Even the prime minister, Jiang Rumo, was from Rome a few generations back. So those people, the officials of those countries, were never recognized by the so-called real Qi people. How were they supposed to deal with this? The biggest problem was that Jiang Wang knew that this kind of prejudice and the superiority of Xianying people was real. Jiang Wang had already made contributions in the Qiang battlefield and received the title of Man of Qingyang Town. Didn't Lei Zhanxian also see him as a country bumpkin? When he successfully came out of the Tianfu secret realm, he was already a follower of the Chongxian family. Didn't the 14th prince, Jiang Weiyong, also say that he had no background? In this case, Huang Yixing and Chao Jie were both very representative. One was an old Xianying official. He controlled a county and could be considered a high-ranking official. The other was a local Xianying person. Step by step, he became a high-ranking official of Qi. If this matter wasn't handled well, it would be a huge political issue. Jiang Wang was silent for a moment, then said, "I wonder if there's anything else you want me to do?" Now, he realized that the Northern Yamen had summoned him so formally. It couldn't be just for him to testify. Who knew how many people in the entire Gui Qi group had witnessed the scene that day? The clues that Jiang Wang could provide would not be more than anyone else. Xie Huaiyan looked at him and said, "The emperor has decreed that Jiang Wang, a 4th-rank blue medal holder, is to investigate this case thoroughly. We must seek justice for Minister Huang in the underworld." It was indeed an order from the emperor himself. Jiang Wang had no reason to refuse, so he cupped his hands and bowed in the direction of the Qi Palace. This subject accepts the order. He was a rank 4 blue medal holder. Being assigned to investigate a case was also in line with his duties. Although everyone knew that his ability to investigate cases was still questionable. Of course, Jiang Wang would not be so stupid as to take charge of such a big case. This was not the Battle of the Yellow River. Whether he could win or not, he could just go and fight. The emperor had given him such an important case. If he didn't handle it well, he wouldn't just punish himself with 3 cups of wine. After bowing, he said to Zheng Shi, "After all, I don't have much experience in cases. My ability to handle cases is limited. I'm only worried that I'll be careless and ruin the imperial court's plan." Zheng Shi was his thigh in the Northern Yamen. Of course, he had to hold on tight. Chief Zheng didn't disappoint him. He said, "Since the emperor values you, you can do your best. Of course, I will also assign some elite constables to assist you." This was basically saying that he could just do it. As for the specific investigation, there would be professionals to do it. At this moment, Deputy Chief Patrol Inspector Yang Weitong, who had been silent, suddenly said, "From what I see, Blue Medal Constable Lin Yuxi is very suitable to assist Constable Jiang in this case." Zheng Shi frowned. Constable Lin's ability to handle cases is not a problem, but his strength, Yang Weitong smiled. What's so important about handling cases in the Qi Palace? Furthermore, don't we have the world's #1 inner yamen? These words didn't give anyone a reason to refute. Zheng Shi didn't mind either. He asked Xie Huaiyan, "What do you think?" Xie Huaiyan sat upright and said slowly, "Inspecting the world is the Northern Yamen's job. I'm just an outsider. You can make the decision yourself. Just like how the imperial advisor, was sitting at the side. After all, this was a northern yamen. As for the specific case, it was still up to the northern yamen's county chief. Zheng Shi said to Jiang Wang, Constable Lin Yuxi will assist you in this case. Constable Jiang, the emperor has high hopes for you. You must not disappoint him. Jiang Wang originally wanted to rely on the other thigh, Constable Yulong. If Yulong went with him, wouldn't it be easy for him to follow? However, just thinking about it made him realize that it was impossible. Yulong couldn't be his deputy. Even if Yulong agreed, with Yulong going with him, no one would acknowledge that this was Jiang Wang's case. Lin Yuxi was different. Due to her cultivation and status, she couldn't surpass Jiang Wang. Jiang Wang was very clear about her ability to handle cases. He had always kept a distance from Lin Yuxi precisely because Lin Yuxi's eyes were too sharp. Jiang Wang said politely, I'll just do my best. Zheng Shi had already made his decision. There was no way he could change it. At this point, he couldn't ask for someone else. Moreover, he didn't know anyone who could be his deputy and was more capable than Lin Yuxi. However, he understood something in his heart. It turned out that Yang Weitong was one of Lin Yuxi's connections in the capital. In such a big case, letting Lin Yuxi in was a kind of accumulation of experience. At this time, Yang Weitong took out a scroll painting from his sleeve. He stood up and handed it to Jiang Wang. In order to minimize the impact of this incident, the scene can't be preserved. This is the scene of Huang Yixing's death. We've already had an artist draw it. Huang Yixing's body is also sealed nearby for you to examine. Under the situation where the death scene couldn't be sealed, this was indeed the best way to deal with it. It preserved the clues to the greatest extent. Jiang Wang took the scroll painting and unfolded it. The whole painting was a composition of an overlooking perspective. At this time, in the early morning light, in front of the tall city gate of Zhaoheng City, an old man with bloodstains on his face was lying on the ground. Surrounding him were shocked pedestrians. Probably because it was too early, there weren't many pedestrians. It could be seen that Huang Yixing fell off the city gate tower. The artist's skills were excellent. The bloodstains on the person's face were very clearly outlined. It could be said that the slightest detail could be seen. It was no different from observing the scene at the scene. It was a pity that the painting was of Huang Yixing's appearance after he fell off the city. It didn't depict the process of him falling off the city. Of course, the artist arrived at the scene later. He definitely didn't see the process of him falling off the city. What the artist could do was to reconstruct the scene as much as possible on the scroll painting so that people could see it with their own eyes. The thing that left the deepest impression on Jiang Wang was that, in this painting, Huang Yixing's expression was very strange. Although half of it was blurred by the bloodstains, it could still be seen that he didn't suffer much when he died. He opened his eyes and looked straight up. It was as if he was looking through the scroll at the person who was looking at the painting. Jiang Wang rolled up the scroll painting and blocked that gaze. He carefully put away the scroll painting and then asked, Sirs, is there anything else you want to say? Handle the case well. Don't ruin the reputation of Bea. Zheng Shi said as he stood up and walked out. Let Dr. Xie have a few words with you. Yang Weitong also left. I'll call Lin Yuxi over. In an instant, only Jiang Wang and Xie Huaiyan were left in the hall. Jiang Wang's eyelids twitched for no reason. Chapter 1208. What did the Imperial Counselor want to say to him? Was there something else going on with this case? Or did the Emperor have some private orders? Jiang Wang was lost in his thoughts and didn't say anything. I heard. Xie Huaiyan looked at him and said, Qin Yangzi and my useless nephew had some misunderstandings? Jiang Wang broke out in a cold sweat. Xie Baoshu, how old are you? Why are you telling your parents? How hateful! How hateful! How shameful! Probably a little. Jiang Wang paid attention to Xie Huaiyan's expression and said cautiously. Xie Huaiyan waved his hand. I heard it vaguely from the servants, so I won't ask you about the details. Young people are impulsive. It's normal to have some conflicts because of a disagreement. He smiled and said, if there are any misunderstandings, you can talk it out. You still have a long way to go. What's a little conflict when you're young? It'll be interesting to see it again in 10 years. Maybe you can laugh it off. There's a saying that goes, no discord, no concord. Maybe you can even become friends. It was said that Xie Huaiyan treated Xie Baoshu like his own son. It was true. As the imperial physician of the imperial court, he had actually personally helped his nephew resolve his private dispute. He was truly very attentive. It seemed that he had wronged Xie Xiaobao. He didn't tell his parents. Jiang Wang thought. Of course, he didn't dare to put on airs in front of her imperial counselor. He hurriedly said, you're right. It's better to squash enmity than to keep it alive. I always have this thought. When we saw Brother Baoshu on the road today, we even took the initiative to greet him. Oh, really? Xie Huaiyan smiled comfortingly. Qin Yangzi is open-minded. He's not an ordinary person. On the other hand, my Baoshu has been spoiled since he was young and has a bad temper. Speaking of which, he's older than you. He's not as old as you. It's really hard on you. Jiang Wang wasn't thick-skinned. He only said, it's not hard on you. I know Baoshu's personality. Xie Huaiyan promised. Don't worry. I'll teach him a lesson when we get back. If he dares to disrespect you in the future, I'll punish him severely. That's not the case. Jiang Wang had a guilty conscience. He could not allow Xie Huaiyan to go home and beat the child. If Xie Huaiyan was wronged, Xie Xiaobao would cry and complain. He hurriedly tried to salvage the situation. Actually, Brother Baoshu is not a bad person. He's just a little too straightforward. There's no conflict between us. It's just a small misunderstanding. It'll be fine after we talk it out. That's good. Xie Huaiyan smiled and said, then I won't hold you back. This case has attracted the attention of the entire nation. You have to be careful. Jiang Wang hurriedly took his leave. Thank you for your reminder, Doctor. One was paving the way for his nephew. The other was afraid of being beaten, but they still had a pleasant conversation. After leaving the charter hall, Jiang Wang was still wiping his cold sweat. One shouldn't be too arrogant. How could the young master of the imperial court's house be bullied so easily? Xie Huaiyan's attitude was good. If it had been someone else with a bad attitude, they would have just scolded Jiang Wang. Who could say anything? Jiang Wang thought to himself. It seemed that Cheng Gengsheng would have to take the lead when bullying Xie Baoshu in the future. That fatty was thick-skinned. He was not afraid of being scolded. He had a strong background and was not afraid of being suppressed. Lin Yuxi, who wore a green scarf on her head, was standing outside the hall. He had not seen her for a while. Her aura had become much more solid, and her cultivation had improved a lot. However, her expression was very distant. She bowed politely to Jiang Wang. Lord Jiang, I've been ordered to assist you in your investigation in Yangdi. It was good to do things according to the rules. Jiang Wang liked to do things according to the rules. No problem. Jiang Wang casually ordered, we have an hour. Let's go back and prepare. After an hour, we'll meet at the Righteous Gate. Lin Yuxi opened her mouth. She wanted to say that the people who ate with the blue metal always carried it with them. What was there to prepare? However, after thinking about it, she finally agreed. Okay. Jiang Wang didn't say anything else. He left Baya and hurriedly returned. He didn't leave anything in the residence that he had to carry with him. Instead, he had to rush back to find Cheng Gengsheng to ask for a plan. There was something fishy about today's matter. He could vaguely see something, but it wasn't clear and wasn't solid enough. If he rashly went to Zhaoheng City, he might step on something. Jiang Qingyang, wasn't a brainless person. However, there was no need for him to compete with himself over everything. Chongqing Fatty was so smart. He had to use him when he needed to. A gentleman's nature wasn't strange. He was good at using things. Cheng Gengsheng, who had been waiting in the residence, quietly listened to Jiang Wang's explanation. His first reaction was to frown. This case is strange, right? Jiang Wang said. How could someone like Huang Yixing commit suicide? However, the implications are too great. This case is really difficult to handle. Cheng Gengsheng glanced at him. Although this case is strange, it's not difficult to handle. These words sounded contradictory, but coming from Cheng Gongsheng's mouth, there must be a reason. What should we do? Jiang Wang urged. Hurry up. I'm about to leave. Cheng Gongsheng pursed his lips. In the end, he said, First of all, you need to know why the emperor chose you. Jiang Wang deliberately puffed up. I'm the world's #1 inner palace. Among the younger generation, who else could be better than me? Then why are you wasting my time here? Cheng Gongsheng spread his fat hands. #1 in the world, you can just kill your way over. Okay, Jiang Wang said. Hurry up and tell me why. Cheng Gongsheng snorted. Of course it's not, because there's no one into Qi that can be used. It's because you, Jiang Wang, should be on Huang Yixing's side in a sense. Jiang Wang understood immediately. So I'm here to handle this case, to show fairness? The key to this case was his identity. He was not a native of Qi. In a sense, he represented the Xian Qi people. Huang Yixing was a flag of the officials of Xianyang. The 19-year-old Qin Yangzi, a third-rank golden melon warrior, was a big flag. When he displayed the Ziwei Zhongtian Emperor flag on the Riverview platform, he also set up a flag of Xian Qi people. In the kingdom of Qi, the name Jiang Wang could be said to represent the achievements a new Qi person could achieve in the kingdom of Qi and the trust he could receive. The key to the problem is, Cheng Gongsheng said, why does the emperor have to show fairness? Isn't this the right thing to do? 14, who rarely spoke in front of others, suddenly said, Isn't fairness the key to handling cases? She was still in a daze, but Jiang Wang understood. Because the result of the case was already out, the emperor needed to make that result uncontroversial. To put it bluntly, the emperor wanted to protect Chao Jie and not let this storm affect him, whether Huang Yixing's death had anything to do with Chao Jie or not. In the end, it couldn't be related. That was why Cheng Gongsheng said this case was easy to handle, because the only person Jiang Wang needed to answer to was the emperor. On the emperor's side, the result had already been decided. The only thing Jiang Wang needed to do was to make this result more convincing. His identity was a part of fairness. So the person who handled this case was not Yu Leng, not other famous detectives, but him, Jiang Qingyang. I know, Jiang Wang said. Then does Huang Yixing's death really have anything to do with General Chao? He asked. Who knows? Cheng Gongsheng rocked on the rocking chair. The rocking chair creaked under the weight. The fat man said meaningfully, You are the investigator of this case. The truth of the case is in your hands. Beside the two friends, the tranquility was different from elsewhere. Jiang Wang sat quietly for a while. Then he stood up and said, Let's go. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.